Good morning to everyone, and thank you so much for being here for our first ever virtual Mid-Iowa Plan Giving Council Fall Conference. As Ryan said, my name is Amanda Newsom. I'm the Vice President and Chief Development Officer at Blank Park Zoo, as well as President this year of the Mid-Iowa Plan Giving Council Board. While those of us on the board would much prefer to see everyone's smiling faces in person and share some coffee and treats with you in person this morning, and we are disappointed that we can't, we couldn't be more excited for what is in store for everyone this morning and tomorrow morning. Our conference committee truly knocked it out of the park while facing what appeared to be insurmountable odds and circumstances, and turned out to be not insurmountable. They were able to do some pretty remarkable things for us this month. 2020 has brought many challenges, from sickness, even death, the temporary closing of many of our businesses, the permanent closings of others, colleagues and friends being furloughed or losing their jobs, some of us becoming teachers on the fly, the reopening of our businesses, the modifying of our services, the limiting of our services, losing revenue, working from home. Some of you, I believe, are still working from home. A derecho and apparently an October snow squall. But through it all, here we are. And I couldn't be more happy to see each and every one of you on this Zoom. I am thankful for you and for what you and your business do for our community and our state, and for your determination to learn and grow with each other at this conference. So with that, I just say welcome and please enjoy the conference.
Thank you so much, Amanda, for sharing those warm remarks. I know that many people feel the same way as you as far as the unpredictability and the crazy nature of things. So thank you again. We will go ahead and go through a little bit of housekeeping here and make sure that we give people a lay of the land and that they are comfortable with the format for today. So I will go ahead. Sorry about that. I will go ahead and make sure that there we are. Thank you. Sorry about that. I will go ahead and make sure that we all feel good about the conference and the TikTok for the day. So first of all, shout out to our planning committee. It wasn't, of course, just myself that put this together. It was Mike Schneider, chair-elect, who kept everything running along the way. Whenever you want to call the timeline or the TikTok or the run of show, Mike came up with like probably 12 versions, color-coded. Each time we wanted to change a little tiny piece of the agenda before I hardly even had a chance to ask. He had a new PDF saved and we were rocking. So Meals from the Heartland is lucky to have him, and he'll be in charge of the conference in 2021. He's already lining up speakers and big ideas for that. So we know that the 2021 conference will be in capable hands. Brooke Pulliam was the other member of our mighty planning trio. Brooke wins the award this year, if there is such a thing, for the most determined to continue serving while wearing her many hats. She wanted to coordinate sponsors right away and was in constant communication with them to make sure that they had what they needed in these weird digital times. In recent months, she sent one kid off to college and she married another one off. So Brooke has been exceptionally busy in her professional and personal life and has kept the wheels on at the the Catholic Foundation of Southwest Iowa. So grateful to Brooke as well. Elaine Appleby was jet setting before the pandemic hit and traveling all over the country in her role at InterVarsity. She recommended many of today's speakers and served as a sort of guru and talent scout and shepherd at the beginning of this process when Mike and Brooke and I were beginning to think seriously about what the conference would look like. So it seems like a lifetime ago that Elaine sat down with the three of us, but it was probably like January. So grateful to Elaine as well. And then finally, To our board of directors, we couldn't do the work without our talented and capable board representing many different organizations. Trish Roberts, John Clays, myself, Mike and Brooke, Elaine, Amanda Newsom, Robin Taylor at Iowa State Fair Blue Ribbon Foundation, Caleb Hegna at Unity Point Foundation, Matt Mokelstead at Foster Group, my buddy Jordan Richardson at the Community Foundation. I think I said John Clays. We have something special from John Clays later today because of course we do. And then we want to make sure that we give a shout out to Barb Hobson, our Zoom pilot today. She's my colleague here at the Community Foundation, and she will be keeping the wheels on the bus from a technology standpoint. So want to make sure that we have a moment to recognize our sponsors as well. They'll have opportunities to recognize themselves throughout the day, but we want to make sure that they get a little bit of love early in the morning as well. So we have Stelter, our principal sponsor this year, carrying the banner of the conference with their subject matter expertise. We have my team at the Community Foundation of Greater Des Moines doing all that is digital and making sure that as the technology sponsors that we keep things moving. Susan Scharnberg, a true veteran of fundraising world and the recently departed president and chief executive officer at Iowa PBS. She'll have some remarks for us later today and was generous enough to give a financial contribution on her own to promote charitable giving and planned giving. So grateful to Susan. The Charitable Giving Resource Center. Everybody loves John Severson and his team at CGRC. Crescendo. I think we have Stephen on the call with us this morning already from California. So shout out to Crescendo and the great work that they do to help with planned giving and making sure that folks have the marketing and newsletter and email capabilities that they need. And then Eden Plus, local charitable giving experts. Eric Heininger is a wonderful resource. I want to make sure that anybody who may not be familiar with Eden Plus, they get the chance to check out the Des Moines Fundraising Institute, and we'll put that in the chat. The Des Moines Fundraising Institute has opportunities for folks at all levels of the profession, and especially for folks on your team who may be new to charitable giving and planned giving. Shameless self-promotion for the Community Foundation, our events calendar. We have all different kinds of programming and all different kinds of ways to engage your board, continue to educate and inspire folks, both on your team and then, like I just said, your board. So the Community Foundation with plenty of training opportunities. Stelter has been generous to put a lot of their resources online, and also making sure that conferences like this one, which are happening all over the country, remain available to folks and remain accessible. Many of the resources in that link that we just posted are free or no cost or low cost, and making sure that you can continue to attend virtual events such as they are in these weird times. Our friends at Crescendo also have a number of live and pre-recorded events, and they have a one-of-a-kind practical planned giving conference. So plug for our friends at Crescendo with their practical planned giving conference slate. And then just a couple more housekeeping items here, and we'll keep things rolling. Wanted to make sure we also gave some love to the Charitable Giving Resource Center. They have their advisor on-call service, so especially for smaller programs and smaller shops, very unique resource that CGRC engages the expertise of subject matter experts all over the country to leverage their nationwide network of experts with non-cash gifts. So that bit of housekeeping and those plugs out of the way. Here's a rundown of how things will go today. Please note that only keynote sessions and sessions in breakout will be recorded. All materials, or excuse me, and sessions in breakout room A will be recorded. So the rooms B and C will not be recorded, but we still want to make sure that we have folks attending those, because all of the resources and all of the materials, all of the speaker emails, and all of the speaker contact information will be sent out after the conference to the email addresses of those who registered for this conference. Folks who are seeking continuing education credits, are encouraged to email our chapter administrator. We love our friend Christina Sickles at Mid-Iowa Plain Giving Council's chapter admin. So her email address in the chat box for anybody who might need continuing education credits today. And throughout the day, today and tomorrow, we'll ask you to put your choice of conference room A or B in front of your name. So in order to add A or B in front of your name, I assume most of you know this, but we're not going to take anything for granted. Since we're not together, I want to make sure everybody kind of gets this. So hover over your own profile image and right click. You will see the rename function. If you actually, it's in the upper corner, excuse me. It's in the upper corner, and you can click on that and rename yourself. So the little ... let's do a little practice and just have everybody put an A or a B in front of your name to make sure everybody understands that concept, because that's how we'll be broken out into our different breakout rooms today. So if everybody would humor us and practice, put an A or a B in front of your name. I see many of you doing that now. We appreciate it. Terrific. Thank you. Thank you. And if anybody has any questions, they can pop me in the chat box. But otherwise, again, we want to make sure that if you don't make a choice, we'll make one for you. But we want to make sure that folks have an opportunity to proactively pick what sessions they are getting zoomed off to use a new verb that we're now all familiar with. So again, that A or B will be important. I am going to go ahead and pop into the chat the agenda for today. So feel free to click that hyperlink if you have any questions about the agenda. Thank you everyone for testing with A and B. I'm seeing a lot of folks in the chat and on the screen. So to get an idea of who's on the call and for our speakers to know more about the audience, we have a few polls that we'd like to share now. And so the first poll is, how many planned giving experts are on your team? How many planned giving experts are on your team? We'll do these quickly, but we do want to know who's in the room. How many planned giving experts are on your team? And my colleague Barb will be welcome to just share the results when it feels like we have, I don't know, over half, 30, 35, 40 responses. Barb can just go ahead and publicize the responses on the screen and we will learn. Okay, so we do have a fair number of people who are one man or one woman shops when it comes to prioritizing the planned giving in their respective departments, and that's okay. Again, this was just more for us to gather information. The next question that we'd love your input in on is, how much time is dedicated to planned giving each month? So how many hours a month would you ballpark? No science here, but how many hours would you ballpark, or would you suppose you spend on planned giving each month? 4 hours or so, maybe catch can, an hour a week. 8 hours, it really is kind of more a part of your day-to-day job, or 12 or more hours for those folks who maybe have planned giving in their title or planned giving obligations in their formal job description. Again, Barb will be welcome to just shut down that poll when we have a few results. Looks like, again, many of us spend a relatively small amount of time on planned giving, which again is okay. We're just making sure that we have a good gauge of folks on the call. Do you have a named planned giving recognition at your organization? Is the final poll that we'll do this morning. Do you have a named planned giving recognition at your organization? So the planned giving society, a legacy society, heritage club, any such named designation for your planned giving programming and your donor recognition program. Do you have a planned giving recognition at your organization? So many of us do. Good. That is a key first step. So grateful for everybody's responses on that. Later today, we will get a couple more opportunities to engage. But for right now, I'd like to do something a little bit fun. We're going to conduct a drawing for a book from our keynote speaker, Alex Brovey, before Nathan Stelter and I have a little bit of screen time together here. So shuffling up these slips. Well, I'm going to reach in here, pull one out. And John Vile, who I think is on the call. John, do you want to take yourself off your camera, or, if you're not showing your camera? I know I saw you on here. John, are you still with us?
I am.
Hey, John, good morning.
Good morning.
So thank you. I feel like I'm a radio DJ or something. You just won. You're the caller number 9 or whatever. But Alex Brovey, I think everybody's going to love Alex. Many of us have heard her speak before. She's a rock star. And you just want a copy of her book, which
Awesome.
she will personalize and mail to you. So, oh, wow. And then Nathan, sorry, Nathan, I'm sure you've been on this whole time, but you just popped up on my screen as a proud dad here. So good morning, everybody, to Nathan. And I'll ask Barb to share Nathan and I's screen together now, so everybody can see Nathan. What's your kiddo's name there, Nathan?
Bryn. Yeah, we're getting her ready for homeschooling for the day, right? You say hi.
Hi.
Hi. What do we think of this snow?
You like the snow? You out and play in the snow yesterday? Yep.
We built a snowman.
Built a snowman.
Built a snowman.
Not
Oh my
sober,
gosh.
that's what you do.
Well, that's good. I'm glad that someone is enjoying the snow. I have a feeling that many of us were less excited about the snow, but I'm glad she's enjoying it. So Nathan and I are just, this is super informal, and we'll just take 8 or 10 minutes of our time together this morning. But I did want to make sure that folks, as we have excuse me, I knew if I opened my Outlook it would be trouble, but I had an email saved from Nathan. I wondered if Nathan would be willing to share some encouraging things that you've seen in the plan giving landscape lately. Nathan, you and your colleagues at Stelter have a wide view of the landscape across the country in plan giving. What are some encouraging things you've seen in the plan giving landscape lately?
Well, sure. Yeah, no, there's been 3 or 4 things in particular that have popped up. And before kind of going into that, just wanted to congratulate again the team here and the board and everybody responsible for the work. I mean, what a great lineup of speakers and talent. So excited about the next 2 days. I think I've heard almost every single one of them speak on different topics, but not necessarily these topics. So looking forward to it. But yeah, no, obviously this year has been crazy. Couldn't even write a script for this year. And, yesterday, as Amanda said earlier, I mean, would we have a squall? I don't think it was snow. It was snow. It wasn't a squall. But this year has been really interesting. I think some of the encouraging things we've seen personally with all of our clients around the country and others as well. I think it's been a really awesome time for those in the plan giving field to shine. We've always known, and we've done marketing for almost 60 years in this space, but ultimately where the rubber meets the road and where the gifts and the relationships are built is one-on-one. And the relationship building that plan givers are experts in has really shined this year. So I think that's been great to see the creative ways that people are looking at. While we can't necessarily sit always in their living room or at their dining room table, the creative ways that we're engaging folks. I think with that is kind of maybe even a little redefinition of stewardship. Maybe pre-pandemic stewardship was the traditional, hey, here's the event that we recognize people, or the gala, or this or that, or whatever it may be. It's really more of a human type of stewardship. It's not as polished. It's more, again, I had I shared notes yesterday, or the CGP had their national conference last week. Was it last week? I don't know. It all blends together. Maybe it's 2 weeks ago. But one of my friends who works at an organization upstate New York had sent me a note saying, hey, I want to send a video out to my legacy donors. My marketing department wants to be all polished and tight and then, all this. She goes, I just want to do it from my phone or from my computer. And I said, yes, I go, please do. 2020 is a year to try anything new. I mean, people understand right now more than ever. I mean, the fact that just randomly my daughter walked in here, I would have been horrified in any other, year doing a webinar, but it's just kind of that, that more of a human side is really, I think, been a nice part, kind of taking down some of those maybe more professional barriers that we had. And so she's just going to do a quick 30-second to a minute video on her computer and just going to send it out, thanking them for everything they've done to keep the arts alive. She's at an arts organization in upstate New York. So I think that stewardship, the relationship building, again, being able to show more of a human side. I'm actually speaking at a conference later this afternoon online. And one of the things that I talk about is there's a couple of articles I've read that are talking about new kind of metrics for us in the marketing world going into the next year, or key performance indicators, KPIs. And one of the articles I thought was really intriguing talked about humanity as a KPI. And I think that's spot on. I mean, I think this year you're seeing, and people will remember the human side that they see, from us, the way we treated them throughout this. So I think that's been a really encouraging thing to see, and not surprising. I mean, I would expect that of everybody here on the phone and everybody that I've been seeing and working with this year. But I really think it's shined through the last 6, 7, 8 months, whatever it's been now. And then I think the other encouraging thing that we've seen, while it has been harder to kind of create that two-way dialogue, because we're not able necessarily to sit in people's living rooms and have those multiple hour chats like we've had in the past. We've been really encouraged to see how surveys have been a great extension. And, a lot of people just doing simple surveys or more extensive or whatever it may be, but, we have a captured audience still, good, bad, or indifferent. People have, depending on what part of the country you're in, have started branching out a little bit more, but as a whole, we still have a very captured audience, and they're willing to give feedback. And so I think that's been a really interesting thing. We've seen surveys grow more and more the last 3, 4 years in particular, but the last 6, 7 months, I think we've seen that really step up because, again, it's just a very innovative way to get people to engage with you. So, I mean, I hope that wasn't too much, but there's kind of the big key themes that we've seen.
No, that's not too much at all. Thank you for that. The only other question we had as a conversation starter before Nathan will actually introduce our speaker with a little bit of fun banter that we have planned in just a minute. But one last question for Nathan, and I know that this is on the minds of a lot of folks. If your board or if your leadership team or if your department is thinking about de-escalating plan giving or moving plan giving to number 6 on your top 5 list, what advice do you have for folks to continue to advocate for plan giving, even though plan giving may not be adding to the big red thermometer every year?
No, I think it's a great question, and no doubt something that's gone across a variety of people's minds through the last couple months, and not maybe not necessarily the folks on this phone per se, but the powers that be, our boards, our bosses. Do we really need to be spending time, energy, resources when cash is king right now? And I would say don't put it on the sideline. I was part of a closing keynote panel at the CGP conference with actually one of my mentors, Jeff Comfort, who I first met when I lived out in DC. He was at Georgetown University, now out at Oregon State, and Cynthia Krause down in Texas at Baylor Medical. And we just had a great panel discussion around kind of what we've seen around the country and within our sectors. And one of the things that he really spent some time on and reiterated, and I wholeheartedly agree with him, is what we saw coming out of 9/11, what we saw coming out of the recession, is we saw those who really stayed top of mind. And I think even, along what I shared earlier with the stewardship side of what we do, really came out stronger in their plan giving programs. I think it is really critical for us to, where appropriate, people may not be able to write that big check right now. And so a deferred gift may be more attractive. I know blended gifts has definitely been on the uptick the last 4 or 5 years. And I think, again, that's going to continue not only now, but into the near future as well. And another thing that I think may be helpful for folks if you're having to, well, 2 things, I guess, that would be helpful if you're having to make the case. You're finding yourself having to reinforce why this is important. The CGP, we just released the national standards for gift planning success, the first ever. And it was really built out of the old metrics initiative from about 6 years ago. And as we looked at it, we kind of stepped back and said, hey, it really is a bigger thing, and broke it into 3 pillars. And the first of which is really dedicated to support from the top. So if you go to CGP's website, they have, assessment you can take depending on how big or small your shop is. You can actually, there's some free resources. I know there's some behind the membership wall as well. But I think that's a great tool. And then Russell James, who many people obviously are familiar with here on the call. If you're not, he's a professor out of Texas Tech, has spent time, obviously, he spent time in the plan giving field and as president of a small Christian college down in Missouri. One of the things that he shared during a couple of recent talks that he's given is how he's repositioned, even at Texas Tech, he's repositioned the importance of plan giving to his board. They had the similar questions. Should we pull back? Should we defund? Or not defund necessarily, but what should we do? Because we really need to support the students and the campus right now. And for, I think, Joe Nolte, I thought I saw him on the call. He actually used Iowa State and Texas Tech, put them side by side in a graph, and he shares it publicly, his presentation around this. And he talked to the board and said, here's are the cash gifts and non-cash gifts, all publicly available through 990 that these two schools received. And congratulations to Iowa State. As a Hawkeye fan, I will say congratulations because they whooped Texas Tech. And the way Russell James repositioned it was actually, I think, refreshing, and something we'll see more of in this industry is he didn't approach the board talking about plain gifts, because we all know people hear the term and they may or may not have any clue what we're talking about. But he reframed it, because the boards understand major gifts. He reframed it as major gifts of assets. And all of a sudden the board understood what he was talking about and decided, hey, yeah, we need to spend more time and energy and resources here. So I just thought that was a really cool way that he reframed it. I think we're going to see more and more of that in the industry going forward too.
Thank you, Nathan. And shout out to the Cyclones indeed, Joe Nolte and a number of other Cyclones on the call this morning. I guess we'll get it. I was just going to say we have plenty of opportunity, and as Nathan introduces our keynote speaker for the morning, Alexandra Brovey, I think he may have something to one last thing to say as we tee up Alex. So Nathan, we will hand it back over to you briefly to introduce Alex Brovey, a good friend of yours who you've known for many years and who has our keynote remarks this morning.
Yes, I see Alex has already jumped the gun on me here. Wow, you beat me to the punch. I will see if mine works as well. Does my screen? No, my background won't work, but that's good. I have other props. Yeah, Alex, I'm so excited to introduce Alex. Alex and I have known each other for probably 15 years since you were, I think we met when you were at Pace University in New York. And again, great line of speakers. And I know Johnny Hayes will be on later, and Tom Ahern tomorrow. I mean, just such an awesome line of Patience Boudreau, who has done a webinar for us in the past. So excited to start off with Alex. And we do have a little banter. She is a Penn State diehard through and through. And I am a Hawkeye, so I have my Hawkeye coat. I did wear blue and white for you there, but I have my Hawkeye coat. So I'll put that on to make sure. It's a little, wow, that's really, I have a helmet, but as my daughter told me, I don't think it necessarily fits. No, not so much. So we'll just put that right there. Oh, look, she does have her Penn State football. So anyways, it's my honor as I drink out of my Iowa cup to introduce you to the opening speaker of the first ever virtual Mid-Iowa Plain Giving Conference here. Alex Brovey, again, it's an amazing resume. And I was going to first lead with your books. Is it 3 books now? 4 books? How many books?
Yeah, so there are 3 books now. Congratulations. You'll have to send me the information about who won the book. So 3 books in a trilogy. Yes.
That's awesome. I think Alex and her approach to philanthropy in this world and the books that she's been publishing around the Zen and the art of fundraising are really amazing, because we know it's not just around the technical side. I know sometimes it can get pulled into the technical, and that obviously is important at a certain point, but it is so much about everything else. And I think, again, what you're going to hear today is going to be amazing. But Alex has a storied career going back to Penn State, Pace University, Stony Brook, and now at Northwell. She actually graduated from Penn State University, and then got her law degree at Georgetown and a master's from the School of Law down at the University of Miami in estate planning. I know you've been part of the board, both in your local councils in New York for Plain Giving, as well as the national, I think when we were called PPP or NC, whatever we're called now. But as just a great advocate for this field, a great wealth of insight and intelligence. And it's my honor to be able to formally introduce you to Alex Brovey. It's all yours.
Thank you so much, Nathan, and thanks everyone, and good morning. I wish I was in Happy Valley, but I'm actually in New York. This is a photo I took from my local beach. I live 25 miles east of New York City, and this is on the Long Island Sound facing Connecticut. Don't know if there are any people from New York or Connecticut on the call, but here we are. So I need to share my screen, right? Let's get this. Okay. All right, can everyone see that? Are we good? All right. So good morning, everyone, and thanks so much for joining me today. And before we begin, I'd like to issue you all a challenge. And we're going to return to it at the end of the session, time allowing. If I were to ask your donors, what makes you a great fundraiser? What traits, I call them pillars in my books, identify? And keep this question at the back of your mind because we're going to return to it a little bit later. So today we're going to talk about some pillars of success. We're going to explore them. We're going to identify them together. I really wish we were in person so you could do as others have done in audiences and kind of shout them out one by one as you think of them. And time allowing, if we have time at the end, I'm going to share what I call some facts of fundraising life, just a little bit of fun at the end. So here's the question. Is fundraising an art or a science? And many of you have been around for a while, have probably pondered this question. And when I ask audiences, I get about half and half, but the smart ones at the end raise their hands for both because fundraising is actually a little bit of both. In plan giving or give planning, technical skills may be necessary, but success requires more. So having great technical skills is part of what makes you a great fundraiser. The secret is finding the right mix. So we're going to identify the pillars. What traits are ones of success? I'd like you to think about that. I'm going to give you 15 or 20 seconds to think about what particular aspects that you have and exhibit, hopefully, make you successful. Think about it for a couple moments and keep that challenge in the back of your mind. What would donors describe? Okay. And we're going to go ahead to the extent any of you are able to use the chat function. I don't know if we're able to see it right now during this keynote. Feel free to go ahead and think about them. I'm going to go through a couple traits that I've written about. There's a chapter devoted to each of these traits. More importantly, a little bit later on this morning, we're going to actually talk about a couple of these traits and apply them to real life situations that we face. So let's get right into it. Number one, being in the moment. My publisher said that he's still working on number one out of 16 traits. Thich Nhat Hanh, who is a Zen master, author of numerous books on Zen and mindfulness, said this: the most precious gift we can offer anyone is our attention. Nathan spoke about that a little while ago when he said, you know, it comes down to the human side. We see the importance of stewardship in times like we've spent. And look, no one's going to say 2020 has been a Zen year. It has definitely not been a Zen year. And most people, including fundraisers, would not say that fundraising is a very Zen thing, right? But here we are. So being in the moment means we focus on right now, what we're doing right now. We resist reflecting too much about all the mistakes we made in the past. We resist trying to worry about everything that's going to happen in the future later on today or tonight or next week. Our actual time that we spend with donors is a small percent of the time. So it's that time that we spend with donors where we really need to focus and really need to be in the moment with them. So some of you might have heard of the monkey mind. What's the monkey mind? Oh my God, I hope my lipstick looks okay. I hope the kids and the dog are quiet while I'm speaking. I wonder if the weather is going to be nice later so I can go for a walk. Oh my gosh, I have that big proposal I need to work on. What are we going to have for dinner tonight? Oh, did I say something stupid yesterday? This is the monkey mind. And many of us have it. If you don't have a monkey mind going on all the time, you're extremely lucky. Consider yourself extremely lucky. We need to find a way to quiet our monkey minds. We need to learn how to locate the switch that's in our heads and turn it off and really learn how to be in the now. So there's an exercise I like to try with everyone. We're going to try it. It only takes a couple of seconds, but it's something that if you take nothing else away from anything that I've shared with you this morning, please take this away and know that you always have this at your disposal. When things are seeming very un-Zen, here is something in particular you can do. So I'm going to read a passage from my book so we can do this. Many of us might be at our homes. Some of us might be in workplaces. We might be in alternative sites. Wherever you are, I want you to try to sit in a quiet spot. If it's not quiet around you, make it quiet in your mind. Quiet that monkey mind. Begin to concentrate on your breath. Take a couple breaths. Bring your shoulders up, put them down. Bear with me. You'll see why this is so important. And then take a particularly deep breath and say to yourself, breathing in, I am breathing in. And exhale and say, breathing out, I am breathing out. To the extent you ever have moments that are trying and you need to do this exercise, it's always available to you. This is something that I find helps me when things are getting a little bit tense. It only takes about 30 seconds, and you might find that your shoulders are going down, you've unclenched your hands and your feet, you feel a little bit better, you've quieted your monkey mind, and you're ready to focus. And it's a good idea to try something like this in advance of any interactions with donors, your colleagues, your boss, someone that's important to you before you speak in front of a group, or whatever it is that might elevate your heart rate a little bit. You really need to learn how to get that in control. It's probably the only thing these days that we can control, and that's why it's so important. We're going to jump right in and keep this going. Skill number 2, pillar number 2 is listening. Now, I used to think that this was the most important thing in the world. Listening very much has to do with communicating, right? Listening is very active. Most of us think listening is passive. I'm just going to sit there and listen. But what happens when we do that sometimes? That monkey mind starts to go, right? So listening is very active. Listening is also a sign of respect. It's focused. Listening is a gift that we can give to the person speaking with us. In April, amidst the pandemic, which was going hot and heavy here in New York, I accidentally signed up for 2 webinars at the very same time. And most people who know me would guess what I tried to do. Yes, I actually tried to listen to both, one on my iPad and one on my laptop. Did it work? No. What I learned is that unless I pick one thing, even though I think I'm a great multitasker, I can't really focus. This is really not useful, especially when we're interacting with donors. And I keep bringing it back to that because these pillars really focus on great relationships with people, and particularly our donors. And we need to try to limit our multitasking. For some people who are very linear and who can do one project at a time, I envy you, because this is something we need to do our very best. I love this quote, so I will share this with you. Okay. Moving on. The third pillar that I like to focus on is compassion. Our donors are among the most compassionate people on earth, especially in the healthcare field these past couple of months with everything people have had to deal with, including personally suffering from COVID or knowing someone who suffered from COVID or worse, died. I had a couple of our state planning committee members at Northwell call me because people in their family and their really close friends, people that you wouldn't think had passed away of COVID. This is the time where compassion shines, right? And their compassion drives them to help other people. We have to be compassionate when our donors experience setbacks and hardships, and this past couple of months is a perfect example. Some will not be able to make gifts on our timeline, right? Donors usually make gifts on their own timelines. They might not be able to pay pledges. They might not even have anything left in their estates at the very end, but they did take the step to put us in. So we might have to put our own plans on hold and give donors space when they're having difficult moments. And this year was probably the perfect example of that. You'll see I like to use quotes. I find that the quotes are very useful in our letters that we send out to donors. Quotes kind of calm the space around your head and enable you to really focus. And I thought that this was a great one about compassion. Here's where I would pause. And if we were in person, I'd ask anyone if they have any questions. In the interest of time, I'm going to plow ahead, but I will take a look at the chat box, if not as we're going along at the end, and be sure to respond to any questions anyone might have. The fourth pillar I focus on is curiosity. We often ask why at initial meetings with donors, but then for some reason we stop asking why. Successful fundraisers continue to ask this question. When donors make a bigger gift, ask why. If donors stop giving, ask why. If they give for a different purpose, ask why. If they share that they give to other charities and name the charities, ask, why do you give there? And when your donors might be considering including a gift in the estate, ask why as well. Curiosity opens the door to many things, and one of those things is gifts. How and why did this person who is in front of you become a donor? What went right or wrong? That's a little difficult these days, having these discussions over a Zoom call, since getting together is probably not in our donors' best interest, but we'll let that up to them. Curiosity also pairs with the previous pillar, listening. Curious people ask why, and then they listen for the response. As you listen, you reflect and discover ways to match the donor's motivations and goals with whatever your organization's needs are. Listen for issues relating to timing, assets, caring for family, paying for college or childcare or elder care, anything else that's important to your donors. And if you're meeting with a couple, keep in mind that each one may have individual goals or reasons for why they're making a gift. And as we joke in gift planning, you want to pay attention mostly to the spouse who will survive. The fifth pillar, humility. Are we really asking for money? On the face of the letters and solicitations and pledges, and even in our words, yes. But really, aren't we asking for something much more important, much more special to our donors? Maybe any of these things. I worked with a donor at Northwell early on at my time here, and he was someone whose family, he and his family were saved from the Holocaust. And I think he told me he was 11 or 12 years old. And he said, you know, I swore that if I ever got out of there and I was ever in a position to give back, that I would find a way to make a difference. And he shared this story with me when he was in his 80s. He came to New York and he purchased a couple pieces of, real estate in New York City. And he did very well. And he followed through on his childhood promise to give back. And you undoubtedly have donors who have stories similar to that as well, and dreams and goals that have been fulfilled. Or perhaps they're helping someone overcome a hardship or making life better for someone else. Cancer survivors are often people who want to give back to help others. They don't want others to have to go through the same thing they did. They want to make the experience a little better. Some people feel a moral obligation or a religious mandate to give. And then some people like other tangible or intangible benefits. And we always lump the tax deduction in here toward bottom. It's never one of the top reasons people give, right? But some people like to be a member of a legacy society or some type of honorary society. All of these things are reasons why people give. Moving on to the sixth pillar, patience. What is patience really? Boiled down, patience is caring about someone else. You're willing to put your donors' interests and timelines first. Donor-centered fundraising is actually one definition of caring. Many people have seen this interesting slide. It shows what we all like to think is the path of success on the left, but very few of us follow that path. Most of us are in the path on the right where we can almost see the pinnacle, but then something knocks us back down. The circuitous arrow allows us, though, to reflect, to pivot, and ends up ending at the same destination. But look at the mileage and all that you've seen and done to get there. Embrace it. Embrace it. Now, we have to find Zen in un-Zen environments, like 2020, like fundraising. How do we do that? By being patient. Be patient first with yourself. As you'll think about and reflect as we go through all of these pillars, you need to find them first and display them in yourself. But then you will start to see them and find them in other people. And remember the challenge at the beginning. Donors are likely looking for some of these pillars in us and in all of you. So start with yourself. Be patient with yourself. Be very patient with your donors. Be patient with your colleagues. Someone said something so kind to me earlier this week. They said to me, Alex, everyone else kind of shrugs when you mention this particular donor's name or puts their eyes to the sky, and you never do. And I reflected on that after a while because I thought, I don't consider myself a very patient person all the time, but they're right. This particular donor has really done good things. And when I think of him, I can't shrug. I can't put eyes to the sky. I don't necessarily smile, but I do feel gratitude toward him and a whole heck of a lot of patience. What do I think is the golden rule of fundraising? Well, we all know the golden rule, right? She who has the gold rules. And the golden rule of real estate, location, location, location. But this is my golden rule of fundraising. Patience, patience, patience. Okay, moving right along. A sense of humor. I wrote these books in 2018 and 2019, and this is way down at number 7. I think sometimes this is the most important trait or pillar that a person can have, and especially in the fundraising world. if you're given a choice, you always want to choose humor over frustration. And at that last minute, sometimes you do have a choice. Make that choice. Find something funny about the situation. There's nothing like laughter to break the ice, relieve a tense moment, or allow a change in direction during a conversation. And laughing can create common bonds, right? So if you have a choice between being annoyed or showing your sense of humor, try the latter. Think about some humorous situations you've had with donors. I can think of one. I was a passenger in the car somewhere in Texas with a nonagenarian. I think he was 93 years old. And as we were approaching a stop sign, he was speeding up. When we got to the stop sign, he finally stopped. I don't know why in the world I got in the car with him, but he offered to drive and said he knew the area better than me, which was true. And we were going to make a left-hand turn, and there was a car coming on the right, but it was pretty far away. So I thought if it were me driving, now would be the time I'd turn. He didn't turn. He didn't turn. He didn't turn. Now I look in the car's just about right there, and he makes the left-hand turn in front of it. You looking back now, I'm really grateful I survived that ride, and him too. But you have to find the humor in these things. And don't be afraid to laugh at yourself. Laugh at your own foibles. You're human. I spilled soup on the table when I was out with the donor one time at a Chinese restaurant. This was my first opportunity to meet him. I didn't even know what he did. I didn't know much about him. And he joined me in laughing and said to me, "Gosh, Alex, being around you, I kind of wish me and my dad still own that dry cleaning business." Well, my foible led to a revelation that helped advance our relationship and my knowledge of this particular donor. So don't be afraid to laugh at yourself when funny things happen. All right, pillar or trait number 8, being a mentor. Why in the world would this be important? Being a mentor does so many more things for the mentor, I think, than for the mentee. Think about what makes a great mentor. Often people will think of coaches, parents, older siblings, neighbors, people that took an interest in them, a teacher. A mentor is a cheerleader, a leader, a sounding board. A mentor can be a friend. You and your mentor are the only two who can set goals for the relationship and what exactly you need from the person. And I always ask, can donors be mentors? Sure, they can. They have wonderful ideas. They lead, they show their leadership with their gifts, and we certainly learn things from them. So I say, yes, allow a donor to be your mentor. And then we have what I've called inverse mentors. What's an inverse mentor? This is someone who you watch and who is a leader, but is not leading by example. These are people who teach us what we should not do. And so long as you recognize this particular group of people for who they are, you can learn from them too. So not all mentors have to be great mentors because they're wonderful. Some we can learn from for just the opposite reason. Now this is the halfway point. Raise your shoulders up, let them down, take a couple deep breaths. And we're going to move into the second half of the pillars of success. I hope you're finding these useful and can think of ways that these particular pillars can help you be more successful. And don't forget that challenge at the beginning. So let's move to pillar number 9, passion. Our donors have an awful lot of passion for our organizations. That's one reason that they give. We can build on the passion that they have and they can help us create our own passion and vice versa. Sometimes if a donor's a little bit bad, we're calling them, now's not the time for a gift. We can rebuild their passion. How do donors express passion? All of these ways, gifts, stories, storytelling. My friend Lynn and I already wrote a book about storytelling and how it can make us so useful and helpful as fundraisers to encourage people to make gifts. They serve on boards, they volunteer, they attend events. They talk about our charities and they smile and their words express their passion. Our jobs involve stoking our donors' passions, and stewardship is a key part of this, as Nathan explained earlier. Pillar number 10, honesty. If you can remember back to middle school, which for some of us is a long time ago, you might recall receiving advice to practice your first speech in front of a mirror. And I'd like you to keep that advice in mind when you're preparing to speak with donors, because a mirror reflects you. This is what your donors see We all know what we'd like our donors to see and what we hear ourselves saying, but we don't know what donors hear. And don't forget to smile. They say even on the phone, even under those dang masks, people know when we're smiling. They can tell by our face. They can tell by our words that we're smiling. We're each governed by an internal set of rules that's called a moral compass. I did a little bit of research into this issue when I was honing in on the pillar or the trait of honesty. There's no universal moral compass, by the way. We're all driven by what we believe is right. 3 of the pillars, listening, compassion, and honesty, form what I call a mighty triad that can help us guide our actions. So keep those in mind. You'll never go wrong if you're following those pillars. Pillar number 11, courage. Few fundraisers would describe themselves as meek or type B personalities. We're quite the opposite. Often we're fearless. And this is especially true when it comes time for soliciting a donor. So I thought about something and I called it the donor dance. Being courageous does not mean we necessarily forge ahead without tuning into our donors' signals. So what I know about dancing is really tiny. It would probably fit on my thumbnail from about 5th grade. Square dancing from elementary school for those of us who remember those days. But the process surrounding a gift can be akin to square dance, to the steps in a dance. The donor steps in by making the donor's first gift. This shows interest in the mission. The donor steps up by making a second gift, or perhaps making a larger gift. And sometimes donors need to step back. They get laid off, they retire, they downsize, they move. They think about their own life and everything that came and everything that's going to come. They might decline to visit with us. They might take longer to respond. But remember, it takes 2 to tango. So as this dance is going on, fundraisers too have the ability to affect the dance. So we step in when donors make a gift, right? We step up when our donors step up, when they need something, when they ask a question, when we know that they need some extra stewardship or extra time or energy or compassion, some of those previous pillars that we spoke about. And then sometimes we have to step back. We have to step back if our donors need time to step back. Moving on, pillar number 12, resilience. I like to call it embrace your inner ticker. Many of us love ticker, right? Think about a time when you faced a difficult situation. I can remember a time not that long ago when we were meeting with donors in person, and I scheduled an appointment first thing in the morning at a diner that was equidistant between the donor's home and my home. And I pulled up and I noticed that there were no cars in the parking lot, and it looked like there was a sign on the door, and I peeked out of my car window and the sign in the window said closed. And it was at that moment that I realized I had the donor's office number, but not the donor's cell phone. So I sat in my car as the minutes ticked by. And I said to myself, what in the world am I going to do? Well, I like to have 3 questions that I ask myself in these situations. And these 3 questions are a sign of a resilient person. Look, you gotta fake it till you make it. If you're not resilient by nature, then work on it. And these are 3 ways you can work on your resilience. Ask yourself 3 questions. Can I find anything funny about this situation? Am I going to let this ruin my day? And the kicker, the clincher, number 3, would this be funny if this were happening to someone else? So I did. I sat there in my car as the minutes ticked by, no donor, closed diner, and thought to myself, all right, let's go through these 3 steps. Can I find anything funny about this situation? Yeah, I kind of can. Imagine coming to a diner where you planned to eat. I was looking forward to breakfast. I needed my morning coffee, and the diner's closed and no donor. And I thought, wow, after all these years of fundraising, here I sit at a closed diner with no donor. Yeah, that was pretty funny. Am I going to let this ruin my day? Now, here's where you have a choice. I could have let it ruin my day. I could have said, why did this happen? This has to happen at the beginning of the day. This is going to be a bad day. This is a sign of a bad week and a bad month. And I'm probably not going to have a relationship with this donor. And yeah, this is terrible. Or I can sit there and say, you know what? This is a blip on the radar. Whatever happens in the next couple of minutes, whether the donor shows up or not, I'm going to move on. The whole rest of the day is ahead of me. I am not going to let this ruin my day. So that's a decision. And number 3, Number 3, even if you can't get over number 1 and 2, number 3 usually does it. Would this be funny if this were happening to someone else? Heck yeah, it would be. If someone came back and told me this story that they sat at a closed diner and no donor showed up, I'd be laughing and we'd all be grinning about it. And as you can see, I can grin about it now. So these are signs of what a resilient person does. These are signs of what you can do too if you have the pillar of resiliency. Next pillar, acceptance. I love this quote. This is one of my favorite quotes. So a moment for introspection. Think about how you handled phone calls, what you said during visits with donors, and the challenges that you faced in your first year as a fundraiser. And if you can't remember back that far, in your 10th year as a fundraiser, or in your 20th year as a fundraiser. Hopefully you are a wiser, smarter person and a better listener today than when you began. And the same thing holds true for looking forward. Hopefully tomorrow and next month and next year, you'll be a wiser, smarter fundraiser and better listener, in part because you're honing some of these skills. We need to learn to accept ourselves first. We talked about that a little bit earlier. The pillars apply to us first. We have to have these pillars before we can go out and seek them in other people. And donors might be looking for us to have some of these pillars too. Successful people, which includes fundraisers, learn to accept themselves first and focus on what they do best. Often we see the best public faces of our donors, and we show them our best public faces when we first meet. But our donors have talents and limitations just as well as we do. And as we tend to form deeper relationships with them, we need to accept them for who they are. And again, I refer back to Nathan's initial comments this morning. This has been a very humanizing year. Part of that is just being able to accept yourself, to accept things that are happening even when we can't control them and don't like them and can't do a lot about them except wear a mask and stay home. Pillar number 14, gratitude. So we think, well, of course, Alex, we should be grateful to our donors for making gifts. But it's more than that. One of my favorite stories was shared with me by a donor. He was a patient at one of our hospitals, and he dropped something when he was laying in his bed, and he was unable to pick it up. And he relayed this story to me a couple weeks later because he said a member of the environmental services team, i.e. the janitorial staff, saw that he was looking down on the floor, came into his room, picked the object up, placed it on his table, smiled, and walked out of his door and out of his life. And when I asked the donor why he decided to leave his entire estate to my organization, he credits this one small act. The donor was expressing his gratitude for something that someone did. And I wish I could track down whoever that environmental services person was and just, if it was socially appropriate, especially today in today's climate, give them a hug. That meant such a big difference. So it's these small acts of kindness that can inspire the largest gifts. And I'm sure many of you have stories about how something really small to a donor, something really small that we do. Think about the birthday cards that you send. For donors in their 80s and 90s, that might be one of very few or even the only card that they get. Some of our donors have no surviving family members. They have their friends. They may live at a place where they have people who are supporting them. They may have aides, but they have very few people that are recognizing something important like their birthday, right? Gratitude is a sign of kindness. Donors show their gratitude with a gift. That's one of the ultimate signs. When we are grateful, we show our gratitude to donors by treating them with kindness. Kindness is one form of respect. And as you might glean by now, all of these pillars are signs of respect, both for yourself and for the other person. How are we doing on time? All right, 10:15, 9:15 your time. Pillar number 15, positivity. You know, we always ask, how are you doing? Or what's going on? I suggest a rephrase of that question. Why not ask, what's going right for you now? Because if you ask, what's up or how are you, you could be getting two completely different responses. And usually the responses over the last couple of months have not been so great. I'm coping is a common response. Think about what you say when someone asks. I'm hanging in there, I'm coping, one day at a time. Those are mantras that we're telling ourselves as we get through this time. And I'm not suggesting you shouldn't ask people how they are. But when you get to a point in a relationship with someone and you've asked them that numerous times, think about asking, what's going right for you? What's good for you today? You turn the conversation around, you turn it to a positive. And I'm not suggesting you stop asking, how are you? But why not consider phrasing the question in a more positive light? Try it on your spouse, try it on your child, try it on your coworkers, and then think about trying it when you're in front of your donors, phone, Zoom call, or someday again, hopefully in person. Even when things are not going so well, you can choose to view a situation with a positive mindset. Remember those 3 questions that form a resilient person? It's the same thing with positivity. I spent quite a bit of time chatting with donors about fears, illness, and death in April and May and June here in New York. But many times the donors would turn the conversation around at some point to something positive. Someone said they were able to upgrade a room, upgrade a carpet, just the little things, learn how to cook again, pick up a hobby, reconnect with family, walk around the block with neighbors. It's very interesting how donors often turn the conversation around before I did. And I tried to learn something from that. I tried to say to myself, gosh, if my donors can turn it around at an appropriate time in the conversation, maybe I can start to lead and do that. There's one example of a donor being a mentor, right? I learned something from those donors doing that after conversation of stewardship calls with our Legacy Society members and other donors. And think about it. When you're in the position of being a donor, which hopefully everyone on this call at this conference is, wouldn't you want to meet with a positive fundraiser? So get the bad stuff out of your system, go through the motions because we all need to do it, and then take a piece of advice from many of our donors, what many of our donors would do, and turn the conversation around. Find something to look forward to. Find something positive. Think about starting the next call with the positive line. Now, pillar number 16. We made it. This is the last pillar. I debated long and hard about this pillar because I put it in there thinking some people are going to think that Alex went off the deep end. How in the world could intuition be a pillar of success for a fundraiser or a person? And I could give you numerous examples over the years, and I'm sure you could think of some of your own, about times when I was thinking strongly about a donor, and 2 seconds later, I either got an email or the phone rang, and it was that donor. Now, what made me do that? I can't point to any of the other pillars for anything in them that could lead me to this moment. So I have the pillar of intuition as the 16th pillar. You may sense something is right and you're going to get a call like I did. You could even sense something is wrong and about to happen. And what's the harm if you sense something or really are strongly feeling something about a donor or a prospect? What's the harm in reaching out to them and simply saying, "Hey, I was just thinking about you." There's that honesty pillar. Are you okay? I hope everything's well. I hope things are going better for you today. There's that positivity pillar. So after subtracting all the other facts, all the other traits, this is the one that ends up being left. Follow your inner wisdom. Some people call it a gut feeling. Some people call it the little voice. I call it intuition. And I'll leave you with this quote because sometimes that's all that's left is how we're feeling about things. And people have spent a lot of time feeling about things. Again, I wrote these books in 2018. Everything was going swellingly in 2018 and 2019, right? But these pillars apply not only in great times, but especially, maybe even more so, in down times. So those were our 16 pillars of success. They are what can help us find the Zen in fundraising. Someone asked me once, "Alex, what are your favorite pillars?" My favorite pillars, I call them the 3 Ps: patience, passion, and positivity. But each and every pillar is actually a sign of respect, like I said earlier, both for yourself and for your donors. So now we're toward the end of this presentation. And you remember in the very beginning, I posed a challenge. What pillars or traits do donors look for in fundraisers? We discussed 16 of them. I'm sure that's not the world of traits that make you a successful fundraiser and a successful person, right? So think about the other things that help you be successful. Jot them down, practice them, share them with me, share them on the chat, share them with your colleagues. And don't stop thinking about them and don't stop honing them. I'm in year 21 as a fundraiser. Hopefully there are many others on the call who've been doing this 50% or twice as long as I have. I hope to be doing this for a number of years longer. I know that I will hone these pillars further over the next couple of years. And I hope that I can epitomize these pillars and donors, when they're seeking them, can find them in me. We're going to talk a little bit later in the breakout session about how these pillars can help you be more successful in specific donor situations. Now, if we have a couple of moments, since no one's interrupting me and telling me, whoa, you got to stop. Let's jump into my facts of fundraising life. I made these up just to have fun. I might have put them in a blog at some point or other. For those who are interested, I do have a blog. You can just Google my name and the word blog, and you'll come up with some of the ones that I've written over the past year and a half. I want you to consider how the pillars help you find fulfillment and make you happy and help you find Zen. I define Zen at its essence as the sweet spot. I want you to think about that. So here are a couple, and these are just for fun. Number one, the essence of fundraising is connecting your donors' gifts and goals with your organization's needs and priorities. Gosh, that sounds like fundraising statement 101, right? But don't forget that. That's what drives the mission. That's what we're getting paid to do or volunteering to do, as may be the case. Number two, a blended gift is a win-win situation. There are whole presentations that I and others have done on blended gifts, so I'm not going to spend time on that right now. But just know that not every gift has to start with writing out a check and end with saying thank you in a letter. That there are gifts that can combine things for bigger, better results and more impact, which is better from the donor's perspective. Number three, when you're on the receiving end of a difficult call, don't forget those two important pillars, compassion and listening. They are signs of respect. They show that you care. Number four, a pledge is only as good as the assets to back it up. Again, there are a lot of things I could say here. One of them, the most important to gift planners, is that there are very few donors who commit to making a gift in their estate who do not follow through, at least voluntarily. Number five, two minds are better than one. That's why in the law, conspiracy is a crime. But it's also why if you pair up with a colleague, if you're fortunate enough to have a colleague to pair up with, then you're going to be able to come up with bigger, better ideas. You're going to have a second set of ears to listen to what a donor might say, a second set of eyes to see what's going on, and not necessarily just from your point of view. Number six, donors make gifts on their own timeframes. Gosh, it's Q4. As my boss likes to remind me, Alex, it's Q4. We get down to brass tacks. We get down to business. We all know as fundraisers, this is when most of the gifts come in, right? In Q4. But donors tend to make gifts when it's good for them. And there is an example of a story I'm going to share later this morning about a time when a donor made a gift that maybe wasn't the best timeline for that donor. And we'll see what happened, or more importantly, what didn't happen after that. Number seven, donors make gifts or not upon the advice of their advisors. You know, as a previous full-time practicing attorney and estate planning attorney, I have a hard time trying to reconcile when a donor tells me the advisor said not to share information about the gift in the will with what I need to do as a full-time fundraiser for Northwell, because I'd like information about that. But a donor's going to listen to the donor's advisor. Now, it can be many of our goal collectively to try to be one of the donor's advisors. I use that in quotes and very lightly, meaning someone that the donor will turn to when the donor has a question. To the extent you ever work your way into the donor's inner circle, congratulations. That's a sign of success, a sign that you're practicing many or all of these pillars and even more that we didn't get to talk about. But don't forget number seven. We're never going to replace the donor's close advisor, and we never want to try to go against that advisor's advice. Number eight, focus on the big things first, then on the little things. There's a famous story about marbles in a jar that time doesn't permit me to share, but you have to get the big task done. Many of us will put off the big important thing that we need to do on a day until later in the day. Try tackling it first thing. And if one of those things is, I just need to reach out to a couple of donors today, then try to do it first thing in the morning. Just keep in mind those donors who tell you after you have a relationship with them that they don't wake up before noon. And yes, I have a couple of those. We have 2 more. Number 9, if we learn only from those who deserve to have the title mentor, our learning would be limited. So don't forget all those people we can learn from whose examples we do not want to follow, that I called the inverse mentors. They're here in our lives for a reason. We can learn from them, if only it is to be not like them. And number 10, just to recap, the pillars or traits that donors expect us to possess. And I can tell you, donors look for them. Donors appreciate our honesty. They appreciate being listened to. They appreciate our compassion. They appreciate all of these things. They really appreciate, back to number 1, when we're in the moment with them, when they can tell we're not checking our email, we're not doing something else, we're fully tuned in and listening to them and being in the moment. And we will get more out of those interactions with our donors when we're in the moment with them too. In the end, your actions are your only true belongings.
Wow. What a beautiful place to end, Alex. Gosh, I think a lot of us, especially those of us who are a bit extroverted and a bit type A, got a lot out of that presentation. I did see 2 questions pop up in the chat. Thank you for those who were kind of tracking. Mike asks, given the current situation, pandemic, do any of these pillars become more relevant from your perspective beyond your 3 Ps or your 3 favorites?
So I think that pillar of being in the moment and just being able to focus on now, and again, not to focus on the negative part about being now, but the moments that you have a chance to interact with your donors. So I would say being in the moment is probably the most important pillar. It's the one that shows the most respect to the donors and the people that you're interacting with. It shows them you're on board. It basically shows them a bunch of the other pillars. You're in the moment, you're with them. I would say that's probably the most important one right now. And as you recall from the beginning, it takes some preparation to really be in the moment with someone.
Indeed, it does. And I think a lot of us who have had the honor of having stewarded major donors would certainly agree with that. The Brooke asks, how has this presentation evolved for 2020? Is there an aha moment such as positivity?
So probably for that one, positivity by all means, because like I said, I start to ask the question differently now. And again, you're not necessarily going to start a call when a donor calls you and pick it up and say, hey, what's going right for you right now? Because you don't know why that donor called you. You have to figure that out. I think resilience is probably second only to being in the moment about how do we get through these times. It's not even how do we get through these moments. It's where's the end? Where's the light at the end of the tunnel? And resilient people know that this too shall pass, right? And we're going to find a light at the end of the tunnel. And we just have to wait it out. So we have to find humor in the situations. We love, that sense of humor has become so much more important, to find those humorous moments, to be positive, to be resilient. So that's probably the difference between the pillars applying in a good year, which they do, and rethinking the pillars in a year like the one we are going through now.
Thank you so much, Alex. Gosh, here in Des Moines, it's about the most dreary day you can imagine. It's cloudy and windy and unseasonably cold here, and your remarks kind of warmed our day up. Anybody might need to top off their coffee and tea after that. That was just tremendous and very reflective. We appreciate that. I do want to point out that since this is virtual, let's all give Alex a round of applause at your desk. I'm going to clap for you, even though I'm all alone in my office here. I think others are clapping. Thank you, truly. And I know that you have a lot more to share in your sessions in the next 2 days as well. So I think many people will be attending your sessions. Barb, my colleague, will take us to the next part of our presentation, a great couple of videos to make sure that we are staying engaged. I will just point out that We want to make sure that you stay tuned. But if you need a bio break, if you need to stretch your legs, 9:30 to 9:40 here, 9:30 to 9:35 would be a good time to do so. As we continue recording, our sponsor video will play here shortly. We will be back at 9:45 for John Severson, a great set of remarks from him on testamentary charitable gift annuities, or testamentary CGAs. Please, if you can, do sit and stay for our sponsor videos, because a lot of our sponsors did put a lot of time and creativity into creating these digital pieces for us. So hang out. 9:30 to 9:45 here for our sponsors to educate you and inspire you, and then be back at 9:45 for John Severson and testamentary CGAs. Thank you, Alex.
We work with advisors in a lot of ways. Financial advisors in terms of our charitable investment partner program, attorneys, tax advisors, bank trust advisors. Really we want to capture the whole picture of the client's financial and legal and tax life, and we do that in collaboration all the time. It's a tool for financial advisors to give them a more active role in their clients' charitable giving lives. We think of charitable giving funds a lot of times as a charitable bank account or a charitable investment account, and it's just a great way for them to be able to actively manage the investments for that underlying charitable account for their client. Really what that is a state tax credit of 25% for gifts to community foundations that are endowed in nature. So there's a spendable balance every year. The idea is that gift lives forever, and it supports Iowa charities.
There's good in our world. Between the pain, the barriers, the suffering and struggles of men, women, children, animals, plants, our earth, can be found people working hard to make life kinder, easier, fairer, more meaningful, fulfilling. And standing beside those extraordinary people, the charities, visionaries, change makers, is you. You, just one person, the face who looks back in the mirror, the eyes determined, bright, open, talents ready to be put to work, passion, so much work, so much potential, so much change to be made, an overwhelming amount of need. And at Stelter, you take that individuality, that subject matter expertise, and combine it with the force of your colleagues, your peers, at the call to arms of our nonprofit partners to collaborate, to create, to advocate, to celebrate, to resonate. And work no longer looks like it used to. It isn't the thing you fear you will waste your daylight on, that you'll give your best years to, that is burning you out as the candlelight wanes. Work is different. The work we do matters to more than you, to more than your colleagues, to more than the company. It makes a difference for more than 1,400 nonprofits, and because of that, it matters for them, for him and her, for life and meaning, for this and that, for our local communities, our families. Every day, the clients you advise, the emails you craft, the mailings you design, the messaging you strategize, the campaigns you weave together, the things that look so little in the moment. Expand, empower, inspire. They accumulate on top of one another to make a huge difference for the things you care about in this world. You make a real difference.
There is a way to boost your retirement income and your support of Iowa PBS at the same time. A charitable gift annuity. If you are 65 or older and can make a donation of $10,000 or more to the Iowa PBS Foundation, we'll pay you a fixed amount for life. For a personalized illustration, call Rob Hilbert at 800-728-2828.
You can reduce your federal tax bill by supporting Iowa PBS. If you meet the minimum age, you can make a gift to Friends of Iowa PBS directly from your IRA account. Transfer all or part of your IRA required minimum distribution and pay no income taxes on the transfer. To learn more, contact Rob Hilbert at 800-728-2828.
Agency fund at the Community Foundation is a nonprofit endowment. In times like these, we know that endowment fundraising and plan giving can sometimes take a backseat to general fundraising and operational costs. But we also know, with times being as they are, that there really is no bad time to focus on the long term and making sure that your organization is sustainable for years to come. As you fundraise into endowments, the important thing to remember is that many of your donors do give both to the endowment and to your annual fund, so there's no conflict between fundraising into the endowment and making your annual goals. Endowments also serve as a great vehicle for plan gifts. Anytime your organization receives a gift after a donor's lifetime, it's a good best practice to put at least most of those funds into your endowment.
that by including Iowa Public Television in our estate plan, that we will give the ability for the station to continue to have programming that's unbiased, that's informational, that is so important going forward in our democracy.
We have a very strong belief in personal responsibility and accountability for the shape and quality of the life around us. So we would encourage other people who feel as we do to take the same stance and provide long-term support for this enterprise.
Iowa Public Television just makes me want to talk about it to other people. It creates a conversation.
For more information about including a gift to Iowa Public Television in your will, go to iptv.org/legacy.
We don't need no fancy name tags. We don't need no conference hall. No catered lunch outside the classroom. No fussing with the thermostat at all. Hey, no fussing with that thermostat at all. Come and join us for our conference virtual. Come and join us for our conference virtual. Come and learn from prudent experts, including Tom Ahern, Patience Boudreau, and our very own Johnny Hayes, and gain much needed wherewithal from the Zen master herself, Alexandra Brovey. Watching from the kitchen or your bedroom, wearing sweats or overalls, or, hey, we don't care if you put on clothes at all. That's the beauty of our conference virtual. That's the beauty of our conference virtual.
Now let's take a look at a testamentary CGA alternative. How would that work? Well, with your IRA account, you simply name the nonprofit as the beneficiary of your retirement plan, because it's the nonprofit that then has to issue the gift annuity. There's no separate trust. And then we have to detail the terms of the gift annuity with the nonprofit and ask them to use the ACGA rates in effect at your death, because we don't know when you're going to die. So we don't know how old the annuitants are going to be at that time. We don't know what the 75/20 rate is going to be, et cetera. And then you can name one or two annuitants to receive fixed life income payments from each gift annuity. But you can have multiple gift annuities. In one illustration I did recently, the the donor had 3 grandchildren and wanted each of those to have different percentages of their IRA. And so we set up 3 different CGAs, one for each of the annuitants, and then split that coming out of the IRA at death. And then at the end of each annuitant's lifetime, whatever is left in the CGA at that point, it's yours. It supports your organization, just like a lifetime charitable gift annuity would do. So when you're creating this kind of an animal, it's kind of like a lifetime charitable gift annuity in many ways, but not exactly. We have to have, the donors have to give special language to the IRA custodian to insert in the beneficiary designation so it's clear what they're doing. And there's some sample beneficiary language that can be provided to you upon request as to what you would give to the custodian of your IRA. It does need a reference that there's going to be a charitable gift annuity set up and so on. It's not simply naming your organization as the beneficiary, or you're going to get it outright and it may not fund the CGA. This language should include reference to ACGA rates in our opinion, which ours does. And if you don't have a CGA program for your organization now, consider working with a third party such as your local community foundation, or we'll help you at the National Gift Annuity Foundation. We've got a lot of experience in that, and that's what we're here for. Let's compare and contrast the testamentary CGA versus the testamentary CRT. How would you compare the two? Well, they're both life income gifts for the beneficiaries, and you can set them both up inter vivos during lifetime or testamentary at your death. Research shows that individuals in the mature and baby boomer generation, I am one, are concerned about retirement income. And I can tell you from a financial planner's perspective, as people grow older, they're less and less concerned about interest rates and account values. They're more concerned about getting that check every month or every quarter in their mailbox. They live off of their income. IRA owners with heirs that are non-spousal beneficiaries may not want them to withdraw the entire balance anytime, especially by the end of the 10-year period that's now imposed upon them by the new Secure Act to avoid the penalty. And so if your donor is of that mindset, this is a perfect solution for them. And it could be that their heirs are just in higher tax brackets and they're saying, you know, can you help me, grandma and grandpa or mom and dad? I really don't want a lump of money that's all fully taxable as ordinary income within 10 years after your death. I'd just as soon stretch that out, add it to my retirement benefits. So that's kind of who you might be looking for in your donor base that could benefit from either of these approaches. Let's talk about the charitable gift annuity on a testamentary basis and why it might appeal to certain IRA owners. Well, it's considerably less expensive to set up, like zero, no cost. They like that. And it's less time consuming to set up and administer. They don't have to worry about hiring an administrator. They don't have to worry about the trustee and so on. It's all done for them. And the administrative costs are much lower because we're pooling CGAs together and spreading those costs over large numbers. Some additional advantages are that the testamentary CRT, while it can pay out, it pays out a fixed percentage each year, but on a moving value that changes from year to year. So with a CRT, the advantage is the income go up and down. The disadvantage is the income can go up and down. And so with a CGA, we know that there's going to be a fixed dollar amount for the life of the annuitant. No market risk. They don't have to worry about what the stock market did or didn't do yesterday, the next big meltdown, the next big depression, recession, whatever all the politicians are talking about. And that dollar amount is determined by referring to the annuitant's age in the contract and the rates established at that time by the ACGA, because we don't know when it's going to occur, but we can refer to it in the agreement in that way. And kind of an unusual little advantage here that I hadn't thought about, the testamentary CGA doesn't have a minimum payout requirement. A CRT for a 40-year-old won't qualify, but a 40-year-old with a CGA will qualify. And so that's kind of an additional advantage, especially if there are younger heirs that you're wanting to benefit. So how do you implement testamentary charitable gift annuity? And the reason that I wanted to do this webinar is I believe that you as nonprofits are going to be asked by your donors and their advisors, can you help us set up a testamentary charitable remainder trust or testamentary CGA? Because of the change under the Secure Act, we want to kind of replicate the old stretch IRA rules. So I wanted you to be aware that this concept does exist and get set up to be able to respond to those requests, because there's a lot of chatter about it in the professional ranks on national platforms. So here's how you implement a testamentary CGA. They're going to have to jointly determine with the charity the terms in the annuity agreement, and you've signed the annuity agreement while you're living. And those terms include, obviously, who's going to be the annuitant. You name the children, grandchildren, whoever you want to receive the funds after your passing as an income. Their legal name, their date of birth, their address, their social security number, just like if you're setting up a gift annuity for yourself. The age at which the rate of the annuity will be based, okay? And that'll be the age that the annuitant is at your death, and then the frequency of annuity payments, quarterly, semi-annual, annual, and so on. And what charity is to receive the assets following the annuitant's death. If you're hosting your own gift annuities, it's going to be your charity unless you're splitting with another charity. If it's National Gift Annuity Foundation or your community foundation, you can name one or more charities to receive the proceeds at the annuitant's death. These are obvious things that are going to be in any charitable gift annuity anyway. So here's an example, a little case study. We have Sarah Smith here. She's retired now. She's 75. And, hit the wrong button. There we go. She has an IRA worth $100,000. And she's a widow. She wants a 35-year-old granddaughter, Rachel, to receive income upon her passing. She doesn't like this idea of dumping $100,000 on Rachel if Mrs. Smith dies too soon. And she wants to leave a legacy to her favorite nonprofit. She's been wanting to do a planned gift, didn't know she really could afford it. She'd like to give more now, but she needs this income. So maybe a testamentary CGA will really work for her and for her granddaughter, Rachel. Let's see how that would work. Okay, so Sarah Smith has this $100,000 IRA. She finds a charity willing to issue a testamentary CGA and having the right documents and paperwork to do it. And then she agrees to designate that charity as the beneficiary on the IRA account with the custodian. Okay, and so she has this testamentary CGA contract. It stipulates in it that that'll go into effect contingent upon the IRA beneficiary designation remaining in place with the custodian, because Sarah could change the beneficiary in her IRA and not fund the CGA, and on the transfer of the IRA account to the charity. That's when it'll go into effect. We have to be very explicit as to when the CGA actually would go into effect at her death. Okay, so then Sarah passed away at age 95, 20 years later. The account passes from the IRA custodian, from Fidelity, from Schwab, from Vanguard, to the charity. The charity then immediately issues the annuity to Rachel Olson, who is now 55, at whatever the prevailing rates are at that time established by the American Council on Gift Annuities. And then Rachel receives an income stream now for the rest of her life. Now she has a charitable pension plan that no one can take away from her. No one's going to swindle her out of it. Creditors and predators can't get a hold of it. And she's protecting herself from having stars in her eyes and buying the new car, the boat, and the vacation. Then when she finally passes away, whenever that is, whatever is left in that account passes to the charity, or is held by the charity that issued the gift annuity. So it's very similar to a lifetime gift annuity. There's just a delay here as to when the proceeds are going to come back to the nonprofit. And my opinion is, well, you might have to wait for it. At least you're going to get it. If they simply leave the IRA to their children or grandchildren directly, you're not going to receive a dime of it at your nonprofit. Now, many charities will not issue a CGA to a person under 55, some are even 60 or 65. In that case, you might want to build a deferral option into the TCGA agreement, just like you can with a traditional lifetime CGA. Unlike CRTs, there is no deferral option, which kind of could cut out a testamentary CRT if the heirs are too young, as I mentioned earlier. If the charity and the account holder decide to deferral is appropriate, you just include that in the agreement. And in this example, if Mrs. Smith died when Rachel was only 45 years old, then the IRA account would have passed to the charity with a 10-year deferred CGA created. And then the CGA would be fully funded, would continue to grow, and beginning making payments to Rachel when she then turned 55, which was that charity's minimum issue age. So that's all doable. So here's how it works at our National Gift Annuity Foundation, which I'm a part of. The donor has assets that go to NGF. When do they go to NGF? At their death, and name NGF as the beneficiary of the IRA. And then NGF makes the payments to the heirs, one or more heirs for their lifetime. And at their passing, then what's ever left it in that account goes to the charity that the original donor recommended. We can actually split it between 2 or 3 charities. If you want to use one CGA with multiple charities, we can actually do that as well. So we just stand in the place of another nonprofit, but we're doing all the administration, we do all the regulatory work, and we do all the investment work, all the tax reporting for you. So again, who is National Gift Annuity Foundation? It's really just a subsidiary of the Decamai Foundation that Brian Klons established in 2003. It's which was set up as a National Donor Advice Fund for non-cash contributions to real estate, CNS Corp, limited partnerships, and so on. And I would mention that, of course, we're able to fund lifetime gift annuities with all those unusual assets, but that's not the purpose of our talk today. We're only talking about IRAs, which come in as cash. But we can take illiquid assets if you want to set up a lifetime gift annuity rather than turn it down. Even if your organization is issuing gift annuities, we'll take one-offs and we'll do one for you. We'll do one or we'll do 1,000. You don't have to have any contract or anything of that nature. Total unrestricted assets backing up the annuity payments as of the beginning of the year were over $400 million in Decamai National Gift Annuity and their consolidated entities. Very, very strong balance sheet supporting the payments to the donors and their heirs. So in conclusion, just kind of a summary here, the testamentary CGA is a simple solution. After the Secure Act stopped the stretch IRA option, we can protect their account from creditors and taxation in the hands of the heirs. If a donor would like to secure some income for the family member rather than have it dumped on them, they can consider the testamentary CGA. It's just a simple beneficiary change at your custodian. There's no legal drafting is required. The charity and the donor must also execute this annuity agreement with the contingency that the IRA beneficiary designation still remains in place at the death of the donor. And it's just a simple and elegant solution for IRA account holders and charities alike that came out of a piece of legislation that was passed last December. Pretty cool, huh? It's just another topic that you can open with your donors to get this discussions going. So the next steps, if you're interested in learning how this would work, you can call our office for a virtual appointment. We do Zoom meetings all day long to get your organization set up to offer testamentary CGAs through the National Gift Annuity Foundation or Lifetime if you have the need for that. So there's my contact information. I'm in the Des Moines office, Heartland. Home office for NGAF is in Jacksonville, Florida.
Friends, thank you very much to John Severson and his team at the Charitable Giving Resource Center. Oops. Excuse me. Good morning again, and thanks to our friends John Severson and the Charitable Giving Resource Center for that excellent tutorial. Everybody give a shout out to John. We are lucky to have him in our community, truly. We are also lucky to have in our community one of the two next speakers, Johnny Hayes. Many of us have heard from Johnny locally, and anybody who is in room B can hear from Johnny Hayes on more IRA information. So if that resonated with you, that was an appetizer for Johnny's presentation. Anybody who wants to hear an extension of Alex's remarks is encouraged to stay here in conference room A for applying the pillars in real life situations. So two great options. Room A is a continuation of Alex, who we heard from just a little bit ago. Room B is a gem, a real subject matter expert in the Des Moines area, local talent, local advisor here in Greater Des Moines. Sorry, I was distracted by a couple chats there. So everybody who has selected room A will be zoomed out here in just a second, or rather will stay, and then Zoom B will be zoomed out in just a second. So A stays here and is with Alex. B gets zoomed out and joins Johnny Hayes for IRA conversations. And away we go.
Well, hello, everyone. Are we, I hope this is working and I'm actually speaking in room A.
That'll make sure that we, excuse me, Alex, I didn't mean to jump in there. We will be zooming out in just a second. You'll see a whole bunch of people sort of disappear, so to speak. And yes, I think we're getting close, and here we go. Yes, Alex, thank you. And then those who have indicated that they want to join room B are being zoomed out currently. So Alex, the floor is yours here in conference room A. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks, Ryan. So for those who are in conference room A, my name is Alex Brovey. You probably saw me earlier when I did the keynote. I hope you're able to see my screen right now. In conference room B, my wonderful colleague Johnny Hayes is speaking, and if I weren't doing this, I'd be listening in her room to all of her expertise. A true award winner, Johnny is. So I put in a plug for her session as well. So those who are here in conference room A, we're going to spend some more time with the pillars, and this time we're going to apply them to some real life situations. I have two situations that Ryan shared with me, a case A and a case B, and I have four in here. We're going to get to them after we go really quickly through the pillars one more time. I know you just all heard them, but many of you probably heard them for the first time. So I'm going to try to go really quickly through the pillars, maybe share one additional thing about each one, and then we'll go through and explore some real case scenarios. Okay. All right. So this slide might look familiar because we talked about this earlier this morning in the keynote. A variety of skill it plays in meetings and interactions. And like I say, even if your meeting is going to focus on how to donate a mortgaged hotel to a Flipkart, you still need a variety of other skills to be successful. It's not enough just to be a technical expert in things when you're talking about gift planning and relationships with donors. So this morning we went over 16 pillars of success. As I said, those aren't the only ones that make you successful. You can probably think of several more. If you want to share those with us in the chat, please feel free. I was actually hoping a little bit later toward the second half of this presentation, we could be a little more interactive. So I'll be trying to check the chat function as often as I can in between going through the case scenarios. We talked about being in the moment. We talked about the fact that unless you're in the moment, the rest of your traits are really not going to come into play. And as we're finding out by reading the news, or perhaps you have someone in your family, even preschoolers and kindergartners are learning to meditate and take those 3 deep breaths that we reviewed this morning. Don't forget that there's an option available to you anytime, any place to help you clear your mind. We talked about listening. We talked about the fact that although it might appear that you're sitting passively when you're doing this, it's actually very active and it's a sign of respect. Many of us who are fundraisers believe we're excellent listeners, and I think that's a chicken and an egg. Part of the reason fundraisers are excellent listeners is that we've learned how to do this over time. Being a fundraiser actually enhances your ability to listen. The third pillar we talked about a little bit is compassion. Many of our donors are motivated by the desire to help others. I'm motivated by helping donors achieve their charitable and personal goals and ensuring at Northwell that healthcare continues to be available and improve in my community. You may be motivated for your own individual reasons at the organizations you work at and at the organizations that you give to. We talked about the pillar of curiosity. I'm an inherently curious person. I like to ask why a lot. And one of my sons takes after me because he asks the question all the time. I like to know why people do things, what motivates them. And remember that this is an important question to ask, not just once, not just when you first meet someone, but to continue to ask it throughout the relationship. We talked about the pillar of humility, and I noticed some people noted this pillar was important to them in the chat function. Some donors come from very humble backgrounds, and humility is a trait of some very successful and famous people. Think about whether or not you're a humble person. I think that probably most fundraisers are. A few of my donors have shared stories about their modest beginnings, coming to this country with very few dollars, working hard, and arriving at the proud moment when they knew they could give back. So humility is a really important trait that donors possess, and I think some of them look for in us as well. Then we reviewed this interesting looking graphic about patience. The path to a gift is rarely a straight line. So think about the last gift that you got. Now, maybe you called a donor, asked for $250 to support a cause that's important, and the donor sent you a check. In that case, your conversation and the whole relationship to that point looks like the line on the left, the straight line that goes up. But more often than not, especially when we talk about planned gifts and gift planning, the line of success looks like the line on the right. This might also look like your career path or your life in general. Patience is a large part of success as a gift planner. And that's why my golden rule of fundraising, if you recall, is patience, patience, patience. Then we talked a little bit about a pillar that I believe has become way more important in 2020. You asked me earlier what was the most important pillar to get through 2020. And I think a sense of humor and being in the moment are very important, those two. Think about a recent exchange where you were angry and you reacted accordingly. Could you have reacted differently with humor? The answer is probably yes. Our donors sometimes express anger, right? When they speak with us, maybe something went wrong. Maybe they got a mailing and they asked to be taken off the list. Maybe someone got a mailing in a household where someone had just passed away and that was upsetting. Maybe they made a gift and never got an acknowledgement letter. Maybe something happened in their life totally unrelated to your organization, and now they're venting and taking out their frustrations, unfortunately, on the phone with you. This is probably not the time to respond with humor, but in other circumstances, when you're given the opportunity, choose humor because it makes life more enjoyable, both for you and for those around you. We talked a little bit about being a mentor, what makes a great mentor, and how we can learn from people who really are not epitomizing what we think of as a true mentor. You likely arrived where you were because of a few great mentors, and I did as well. At some point, it will become your turn to accept the baton and to run with it. Keep in mind that you might find a mentor in your donor pool or at a competitor's organization or even next door. Mentors are all over the place. And beware of inverse mentors, beware of them, know who they are, and then learn from them accordingly. All right. So moving on, we're about halfway through our brief review of the pillars before we get into our case studies. So we talked about the pillar of passion. Now, many people say that this is the number one reason why donors give. It could also be the number one reason why you choose to work at your organization, because of your passion. You have passion, your donors have passion. We don't all have equal levels of passion at all times, so we can exchange, nurture, and trade passions with each other. Sometimes our donors get it from us. Sometimes we build it from our donors. If you're new at an organization, you might not have a whole lot of passion about your organization yet if you weren't aware of all the services that your organization provides, but you can build it over time. I guess passion is the number one reason why I've heard that donors make gifts, but fundraisers too need to be passionate. And the pillar of honesty. I noted that there were a couple comments in the chat, and this is something that's become oh so important in 2020 when we talk to people. Something I didn't say earlier that I'll share with you now. You know, there's a difference between transparency and honesty. I wrote about this a little bit in my book. Transparency is outward looking, right? You want to be transparent. You want people to go to your website and see your gift acceptance policies, or you want to be transparent and let people know that here's how you spent their money, which is really important. But transparency is more outward focused. It's looking out, it's projecting outward, whereas honesty is projecting inward, right? Only you know the truth. Only you know if you're being honest. And if you're being honest, it's easier to express something to a donor because they can sense when you're being honest. Don't forget, this is where I said, look in the mirror. This is the view that your donors see. Honesty is also a gift that you give to yourself, and it's very inward reflecting. Then we talked about the pillar of courage and being a fearless fundraiser. So outside the fundraising world looking in, everyone thinks that fundraisers possess unlimited courage, when the secret is we really have to build up our courage day to day and time to time. We don't always feel like we have enough courage to do what we need to do, but somehow we find it when we need to. Every yes and every no from a donor is another notch in our courage belts and teaches us something that we can use in future interactions and in future situations. And then we came to our inner Tigger, our pillar of resilience. You know, much has been written about resilience lately in 2020 and looking back and even looking ahead at what we might still have to deal with for the next 6 months to a year. Resilience is a favored trait of leaders and successful people. My personal motto is embrace my inner Tigger. And don't forget, when you're faced with a difficult situation, ask yourself those 3 questions. Is there anything funny about this situation? Am I going to let this ruin my day? And if you can't get past 1 and 2, would this situation be funny if it were happening to someone else? So when you're faced with a difficult situation, lift your face up, take a few deep breaths, and keep going. They say that sometimes if you put a smile on your face, it tricks your brain into thinking that you're happier than you really are. So why not try to give it a smile? Sometimes a smile is the right answer. Then we talked about the pillar of acceptance. And I said you have to accept yourself first, your skills as well as your foibles, your flaws and your good traits. Know yourself so that you can begin to know and accept your donors. And over time, as you hone relationships with your donors, they will learn to accept you, flaws and all. We talked about the pillar of gratitude. I shared an example of how a very small act of kindness by someone in the hospital inspired a gift from someone's estate. Think about all the stories that your donors have shared to you over the years. Some of them undoubtedly involved people who were giving back, paying back a favor. A common example is a donor who established a scholarship fund decades after receiving a scholarship. Often these donors pay back well more than what they ever received, and they never really feel like they're equaling it out, but they do it because they're trying to express their gratitude. We talked about asking the question in the right circumstances, what's going right for you now? So that we can turn the conversation to a brighter, lighter point. And I shared that during all my COVID conversations in the heat of the pandemic in April and May here in New York, that often the donors would get the things that were bothering them off of their chest. And then they would turn to talk about something positive, a new hobby or something good that they read about or something kind that someone down the street had done. And I guess that's probably part of a sign of human nature is generally as a species, we're pretty positive. Think about it. Does everyone have at least one thing around at your fingertips with a smiley face on it? The answer is yes if you have a smartphone, because you can always choose a smiley face. And often when I'm texting, sometimes even when I'm emailing, I like to put that smiley face in there. I think like a picture expresses 1,000 words. I think that lends a note of positivity to the conversation. Send a smiley face to someone today if you have a chance. And then we came to that somewhat mysterious but final pillar called intuition. And the underlying goal is you need to follow your little voice, your intuitive, your inner wisdom. If you hear a little voice, not voices, that's a whole other thing for another conversation. Listen to that voice, especially if it tells you something is either not right or is going really well. This happened to me a couple months ago when I read about someone I met being arrested. You know, I remember when I first met this person, I had a funny feeling as I shook his hand and I couldn't explain it to anyone. And I mentioned something, this happened a number of years ago, but I mentioned something to a colleague and my colleague said, I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't feel anything. Well, it turned out that years later, there was an underlying problem with this person. And there was no outward sign, there were no facts. I couldn't put my fingers on anything, but sometimes you just get a strong feeling about something. You learn over time to trust those feelings because they're probably meaningful. Let facts come into play, but trust your intuition when you have it, especially if it's urging you and you're thinking about one of your donors to give that donor a call. There might be a reason. There might be something good that comes out of it, even if it's only, I was thinking about you. I hope you're having a good day. Donors are flattered when they hear that. So those were our 16 pillars of success. We talked about the fact that there are probably many more unlimited pillars of success for fundraisers as well as being successful in life. But those are the 16 that we went over this morning. Before we apply these pillars to situations, I'm wondering if it's possible for those of us who are on the Zoom call to unmute ourselves so that we can actually have a dialogue as we go through some of these situations and applying the pillars. I'll let whoever's monitoring this determine if that's even possible. Okay, so we're going to move to part 2, which is the essence of this breakout session, which is applying the pillars to some real situations and determining which pillars can actually assist us. Before we get into some scenarios that I prepared, I had spoken with Ryan or emailed with him, and he shared a couple of scenarios with me, and I thought it would be interesting for me to share them with you. So I'll read them, and then we can try to apply the pillars that we went over. If you look back in the outline, you'll see what the 16 pillars are, just pillars that you've come up with that can help make you successful. All right, so let me read you the first scenario. We'll call this case 1. Okay. A major donor was introduced to my organization by a board member. And I, the person who sent me the email, who was the director of development at this nonprofit, took the board member's suggestion that we put this donor on an event planning committee because she and her husband are well connected and they're known to write big checks. All right, so that sounds pretty good. This donor, we'll call her Linda, eagerly agreed, and she began showing up and offering suggestions for the event. So she really wanted to get involved. That's one sign of love for your charity, right? She sponsored the event. There's sign number 2. And she and her husband, John, showed up. Linda and John, however, were not asked to try to fill a table. They were not asked to consider another gift or even a planned gift. They were not asked to serve as host or continue serving as a sponsor for the following year. Apparently, they continued the sponsorship at the same level, but Linda was unable to return and be a volunteer as she had been in the first year. And they did not consider a plannual gift. So they didn't consider any type of blended gift or anything other than just the sponsorship specifically for the event. However, on a positive note, John and Linda were taken on a tour of one of the clinics and were introduced to some of the persons served by this organization and expressed that they were touched by the experience. So those are the facts that we have been given. Oh, I'm so sorry, I keep turning this forward. And I'm wondering if there's any way that some of us are able to unmute ourselves and share some thoughts. Let me give it a minute to see if that's possible. Gosh darn it. I am so sorry.
It is possible to unmute ourselves.
Ah, okay. I heard someone's voice. So, Joan, is that you?
Yes.
Joan, do you have any thoughts about this scenario, and can you point to any pillars that might help you figure out what to do now, or maybe pillars that could have been applied that would have helped this situation move along?
I'm still caught up in unmuting. Can you put the scenario back on the slide?
Joan, I'm having some trouble hearing you, so I'm not sure if others are as well.
Alex, can you hear me? This is Lynn.
Lynn, I can hear you. Good morning.
Good morning. Yeah, I think what she was asking is if you could go back a slide and put the scenario up there.
So I'm so sorry, Lynn and others. I don't have this scenario because Ryan shared it with me a couple of days ago. So the highlights are we have Linda and John. They were introduced by a board member to the director of development. Linda became actively involved on the committee, and she and John decided to sponsor the event. And she was actively involved in this. They showed up. They were taken on a tour. They were introduced to a family. They said they were touched. However, they were not asked to fill a table at the event that they sponsored. They were not engaged for any other type of gift, including a re-up for the following year. No one talked to them about any type of annual or plain gift outside of the sponsorship. Does that help? I hope that helps everyone. Those were the facts that I was given. What I was thinking of when I first read about this scenario is, what would these donors, what would Linda and John need or want from us? So the event is over. Let's assume that it was a success. They were actively involved. They were sponsors. A board member suggested them. There must have been a reason. We aren't privy to that conversation. And then we ask, what would the donors want or expect from us? And then I turn around and ask at the same time the question, what do we need or want from the donors? Now, as fundraisers, we'd like more. And it's easy to say we're never satisfied, but what we want to do is keep asking donors to their limit. And we don't know where that limit is unless we use one of the pillars, which is the pillar of curiosity, and asking why. I mean, do we know why Linda decided to do this? This was a board member suggestion. I assume that Linda and John are friends with the board member, but we don't know. But why did they decide to become involved? Why did the board member tap them? At many organizations, board members are asked to tap their friends to make a gift or tap their friends to sponsor something. Maybe the board member was being honored and they were friends of the board member and they decided to help honor that particular board member. We don't know, and the facts might vary because the situation can be applicable to any number of situations. In my own head, if I'm thinking about how these pillars that we reviewed could help in this situation, I think for the donors, there are 3 pillars that stand out. And remember, the pillars apply both to you as the fundraiser, and they're also happening on the other end with your donors. So the pillar of passion, again, they must have had some reason why they said yes, and why they didn't just write out a check. They became actively involved and they attended the event. It would be easy to just whip out a check for a friend, but Linda especially did more than that. So she's evidencing passion, right? Another pillar, gratitude. Now, we don't know what they were thankful for or why they decided to do this, and we lumped that under passion, but perhaps they were grateful, even if only for the friendship with their friend who's the board member who asked them to become involved. And then we have being a mentor. What Linda was doing really was she was showing through her service, she was showing her action. She was actively becoming involved. She was serving as a mentor to others on, hey, my friend, the board member asked me to do something. I stepped up to do it. I didn't just make a gift, but I actively got involved and I attended the event. So it's leadership by example. And that's an example of the pillar of being a mentor. Does anyone have any other pillars they can think of that the donors evidenced? And then we'll turn to the donors that the fundraiser might have evidenced.
They demonstrated compassion, as they visited the, sorry, there's a siren coming by.
That's okay.
As they visited the patients in the clinic and were able to see. So that's an evidence of compassion and, mobilizing curiosity again to find out where that compassion originates and maybe some humility because perhaps that is an experience that is personal to them, but just asking more questions could help move them along the continuum.
Absolutely. And I love that phrase, mobilizing anything, mobilizing passion, mobilizing curiosity. That's a great phrase. I'm going to remember that one. Those are excellent. So it's not that if I sit with every scenario and try to apply every single one of the pillars, but I look for them because I believe the more pillars there are, the more signs there are that the relationship or the transaction that leads to the relationship is going to be successful. I don't really like to apply pillars to transactions per se. It's more to the greater picture, the bigger picture of relationships. But you can apply them to transactions because multiple transactions are what will build into a relationship, right? So those were excellent. Thank you for sharing those. And then I always think about this is what are the pillars that we as the fundraisers have evidenced or can evidence here. So I put down a couple of them. So the pillar of curiosity, I mean, to me, we didn't spend enough time asking why. So I would want to know a little bit more about what inspired them. And now that the event is past and we heard that they kind of agreed to sponsor again, but that's kind of the limit that they're going to this year, I'd kind of want to find out what inspired you last year to become so involved and to give. And I understand you're busy and can't be as involved this year, but I would hope that you be part of the fabric of this event moving forward. You've been so important to us. We so appreciate the board members suggesting what inspired you to become involved. That's kind of asking the what, the why question, the curiosity. Patience. Patience is one of the hardest pillars to master. Some of us will spend the rest of our lives trying to master that pillar. We'd like donors to do more. That's our nature. Our bosses ask us, let's try to get more. Let's try to raise more money this year. Let's try to have a larger campaign this year. But sometimes we have to put a stop to it to the monkey mind, to be in the moment, to thank these particular donors, and then to be patient as they navigate whatever's going on in their life. She couldn't help as much this year as she did for the prior year when they were a sponsor. So that's something that we just have to be patient and overcome and let time go by. Gratitude, of course, we're very grateful, but we're also grateful for the fact not only of her gift, but for her involvement. It shows one more level of commitment to the organization, and it's another way to show passion. And we mentioned passion already. And acceptance. So we need as fundraisers to accept where the donor's at. We ask the donor for $1,000. The donor says they can give us 500. Our curiosity might say, you know, in the past you've given us 1,000. Why is it that you're able to give us 500 this year? Which is probably a better way than asking, why in the world can't you give us the same amount you gave us last year? Not a very donor-centered way to ask a question, right? So those are some of the pillars that I believe the fundraiser could or would show throughout this scenario. Can anyone think of any other of the pillars that the fundraisers might show, or how they could express the pillars to this particular set of donors? Oh, everyone's just relaxing and sipping coffee on this rainy day. All right, let's do this. Let's move on to case
Alex?
scenario. Oh, yes, please, Colleen. Yeah.
Hi, I just wanted to say what's kind of been running through my mind is, you know, related to their engagement in being on this event planning committee and, you know, kind of the acceptance that maybe right now is not the right time to ask for the gift, but cultivating them more. I'll admit that part of me was like, oh, you know, they're on the committee and they came to the event. And if I'm not mistaken, they didn't make a gift to that event as a sponsor, if I followed that. So part of me was like, oh, missed opportunity. But then part of me was also thinking, well, acceptance that this is their journey and their timeline, as we all know that donors make gifts on their timeline. So that's what's crossed my mind.
Those are very good points. And I think you were kind of egging up against the resilience too, because the pillar of resilience means, okay, we had it good in the first year. According to the facts, they sponsored the event, but they didn't fill out a table. They didn't ask their friends. They didn't draw others into the event. They just kind of spent their time and their money and their efforts on the event that first year. You know, what do we do when things don't work out the way we, the fundraiser, feels they could work out in year two? And again, it is the donor's timeline that rules and that reigns. We do have to follow, but we can be resilient. They were pretty good in year one. There were things that we missed. Year two, we were hoping to probably build. We would have tried to fill a table, ask John maybe to be more involved, see if they had any friends who want to come. So our resiliency comes into play because now we're looking at this situation, and now part of us is thinking of year three. We're not just thinking of any given year. We're thinking way ahead. We're looking way out into the future. We're thinking maybe they're interested in doing more than just sponsoring an event. Maybe they're interested in learning more about our organization and its mission. And the event goes a long, long way, but it doesn't do everything we would like it to do as the fundraisers. I think a lot of this often comes down to patience and acceptance, kind of like the seesaw in play with our donors and what they want to do. The only way I think we can break that seesaw is kind of by continuing to express our gratitude and continuing to be curious. Linda, your time obligations, you said, prevent you from being involved this year. I would really love it if you are able to be a sponsor again and take on a more active role like you did last year moving forward. What are your thoughts about that? You know, this is part of the resilience coming into play. So those are very good points. Thank you for that.
So Alex, this is John Clay speaking. Hello.
Hello, John.
We would do a series of point of entry events at Lutheran Services in Iowa, where I work. And in following up with the attendees of this, many of them had no history or maybe knowledge of our ministry. So one of the standard questions that I would say, do you have any questions about what we covered? And is that, do you see yourself getting involved in our organization in any way? Because we may have a predetermined path of how we want them involved, which may differ greatly from what they observed and how they felt they could use their time or talent. So that would be a very open-ended way of them. Maybe they said, well, I'd love to serve on your board someday, or just plant some seeds to germinate on our side too.
And I love that, John, because you just, something I didn't touch upon that I should have in the pillars is the mix of with curiosity and asking and resilience and following up is really putting it in the donor's box to ask them questions. And the easiest questions for donors to begin answering, which you posed, are yes or no questions. Can I share with you a little bit more about what we do so you can see how our mission really makes life better, or really fill in the blank for whatever your organization's mission is and how you carry it out. And then after the yes no questions, to do what you said and ask the open-ended questions. You know, if I were to ask you to think about our organization, what are a couple words that come to mind? That's one that I like, because that makes people have to sit and think. They're actually thinking, they're trying to put the mission in their own words. And when a donor can do that and put the mission in their own words, you've just synced something in their mind with respect to your mission. So those are excellent points. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, so let's go on. So I have one more case study that was shared by Ryan, for which I do not have a slide. I apologize. I didn't have time to put this into a slide. So let me read the facts and I can go over them and remind everyone of them in the end. So case number 2 is a little bit different than case number 1. A major donor was cold solicited because of the donor's name and grudgingly gave $2,500 because of perceived affinity for this particular organization. This organization is a nonprofit with a progressive or left-leaning mission, is what we were told. Let me read that first sentence again. A major donor was cold solicited because of the donor's name and grudgingly gave $2,500 because of their perceived affinity for the organization. A couple of interesting words in there: cold, grudgingly, and perceived. When I read those 3 words, I didn't really have to go too much farther to think about a whole bunch of pillars that either could have been, but weren't, or should have been at play. A bare minimum of degrees of separation and a little peer pressure from a board member convinced Mary, the donor, to give the $2,500, and she never gave to the organization again. Now, if we were in person and I asked for a show of hands of who's surprised that Mary never gave to the organization again, I don't think any one of us would be surprised by that. We might say there are efforts and things we might do, but none of us would be surprised. And the director of development tried very hard to engage Mary, and that those efforts were unsuccessful. You know, my first question to myself is, how many pillars can I identify? But before we answer that question, I think back to that phrase we all learned at a much younger age. You only get one chance to make a first impression. And if you're cold calling someone, that's basically the first impression they're going to have about your organization. And then I think about something else we've learned as fundraisers and just as good human beings. What if Mary were your mother or your sister or your wife, or you were Mary and got this call? I think so often the answer to difficult questions can become much easier if we put ourselves in the donor's shoes and say, if I turn this around and I was asking me as the donor what I'm about to ask the person I'm calling, how would I feel about the tone, the question, the words, the build up to it, and what's done afterwards? And I think we'd all find we might change things a little bit about the way we carry out our fundraising practice going forward. So question 1, was this gift a success? And many colleagues, many major gift colleagues would say yes. You cold called a person with whom you had no relationship, you asked for $2,500 and you got it. Success. Me as the gift planning person, probably now considered somewhat of a veteran, I would say, you know what? You won the battle, but you lost the war. If Mary was so good that her name was good, meaning probably that she came from a family with wealth or she herself had wealth, and all you got was a measly $2,500, and I'm not knocking that level of gift, but if all you got from a family of wealth was one gift of $2,500, you lost the war. It was a very it was an intense kick out, an attempt to try to get something. It sounds like it was a pressure situation, and it wasn't necessarily a good situation. There was no relationship with Mary here. I sat here and I tried to figure out how many pillars could I identify in these facts that I was given. I have trouble coming up with any of them. Now, was this a success? Again, by one measure, yes. You asked for and got the gift. The solicitation was a success. You got a yes. But really, is this a successful scenario? Does anyone want this scenario to repeat? Do we want to have too many Marys? We probably have Marys in our portfolio, and this is not what we want the result to be. This is a short-term gain and a long-term loss. As a matter of fact, what we don't know these days is whether Mary went on whatever, Facebook or just sat chatting with her friends on Zoom calls, randomly passing the time till we get a vaccine or some type of cure for COVID, and saying how nasty this was and how awful, and has anyone else been treated like this? And now all of a sudden the word is out. It's not just Mary. We might have lost a whole host of potential people who Mary hangs out with in terms of affinity for our mission. So those are a couple of my thoughts. So let me open this up. What do you all think? What, if anything, could the Director of Development do now faced with this situation? Or do we just write this off and move on? What could we have learned? What pillars could have been applied? What can we do now? I open it up.
Alex, this is Colleen again.
Oh, hi, Colleen.
So I'm wondering, would we be able to use some curiosity in this scenario? Hopefully this donor would accept a phone call or a driveway visit or a outdoor visit when it's not winter. The fact that she did agree, although begrudgingly, just finding out more. She has some level of interest in the organization. So finding out, asking her why questions to find out, she could have just said a flat out no, but she didn't.
That's true. So we have the pillar of curiosity. Yeah, there must be some reason why she made the gift, however grudgingly, because she could have just said no and not made the gift. That's true. Perhaps she was grateful for something, even being in the wonderful position, the lofty position to be able to make a gift and to have society realize she was in that position. I think she probably felt obligated, although again, she didn't have to say yes. I like that pillar. I think right now at this stage in the relationship, think that the pillar of humility might very much come into play. Humility has a tone of apology to it in certain situations. This would certainly be one of them. Humility means your hat is in your hands and you're going to someone to say, we're so grateful that you made that gift. Can we share with you how we used gifts that we received from you and others this year and what a difference it made? And although it's winter and you may or may not want to help me build a snowman, at some point when the snow melts and we're in a different time in 2021, I'd really like to take you out for coffee for 30 minutes and simply say thank you for responding to something before we even had a chance to check your level of passion. We're so appreciative for what you did. And we realize that we handled things maybe not in the best light. You know what they found in healthcare, for those of my colleagues who are in the healthcare field in this session, they found that they've studied malpractice cases with doctors. And oftentimes, if patients had something adverse happen to them, what they really wanted, not money, not a lawsuit, not notoriety, what they really wanted was someone just to say to them, I'm sorry. Not even, I'm sorry I did this to you, but I'm sorry that this happened to you. And so this is a case where maybe the apology, the humility factor kind of needs to lead. And then somehow morph into the passion, the fundraiser's passion for the mission. So being grateful, but again, a $2,500 gift to Mary, I'm sensing is not a big one for her. So to be grateful that she was willing to do something, anything to move forward your mission. Maybe tie it into the fact that you have donors who give at all levels. At Northwell, we have people who give us $2 and $3, and they say that that's all they can afford to give. And we're so appreciative for every donor and every gift, and express that $2,500 in the grand scheme of things is a significantly larger gift and can do significantly more. And we just want to circle back and say thank you. And maybe we could have handled things better. And we apologize. And we'd like to see if there's a chance that we might be able to call her in a couple months and just fill her in on what's going on. It seems to me sometimes the soft touch gets you a lot farther than the heavy touch. And I think when I watch, again, my Penn State thing, but I'm sure Iowa has a great volleyball team as well. I watch volleyball players, and I'm 5'2", so I'm not a volleyball player anymore, or really never was. But I watch volleyball players, and you love when they bump, set, and smash it over the other side, right? But what's a winning play some of the times? The winning play sometimes is just the gentle touch right over the net. This situation probably requires the gentle touch.
Alex, this is Lynn again. I'm monitoring your chat. Angelina was right there with you. She said, I would start with gratitude, thank her, and then curiosity, which, you know, you touched on as well, trying to find out a little bit more. And then Carl also said, follow up with a phone call and ask the why questions. And Colleen said, yes, love humility. So.
Yeah, so thank you, Lynn. I appreciate that. So, you know, this is where, again, are the pillars something that are going to be front and center in every case? No, what I'm trying to do is show you how thinking through scenarios and having these traits and these skills and realizing how they help you, how they can help you with relationships, how they can help you not only again when times are good, but probably more poignantly when times are not as good. This is the purpose of the pillars. This is the purpose of some introspective thinking, even from those of us who are type A. So thank you for all of that. I'm not sure how much more time we have. So in the interest of time, let me move to the scenario that kept wanting to pop up on my screen for some crazy reason. And let's talk about our scenario that you will have a screen and some facts for. And this is a scenario with Nancy. Let me go over these facts. So I pose a question at the beginning: is a donor's good news always good news? So here are our facts. Nancy's been an annual donor for 5 years. Okay, that's pretty good. You are meeting to discuss the use of her gifts and the campaign. You bring a proposal for solicitation, and after some small talk and placing your lunch order, you take a deep breath. Now you're all ready, right? You're primed, you're in the moment, you're ready, you've done your due diligence, and Nancy smiles and says to you, before you can say anything, I have some good news. I visited with my attorney and put your organization in my will. And here's where we'd usually have reflection and discussion. Now, I just saw a note, Lynn, do we have only 2 minutes left? Is that the case?
Yes,
Okay.
we only have
Okay.
a couple minutes left.
Okay, so let me jump in and share some thoughts with you. So sometimes a donor's good news is not necessarily good news for the person who's hearing it, i.e. the fundraiser. If your goal was to actually ask her for a new gift and she comes to tell you that she did something else, how are you going to mesh those two things? The pillar of humility comes into play. The pillar of acceptance comes into play. The pillar of curiosity, the pillar of gratitude. Nancy, thank you so much. We're so grateful that you did this. Curiosity. What inspired you to do this? What about our mission? Here's the pillar of passion. What inspired you to do this? Find out what it is that she did in her will. You may decide you're not going to bring your proposal out to her today. You may decide you're going to work on one of those plannual gifts and meld what she did in her will that she's doing in the future with something that she can start today. So those are all skills and things that fundraisers will need to do. And these are the way the pillars can help inspire you, inform you, help you get through rough times. Celebrate the good times with the passion and the gratitude. And don't forget that first pillar, that being in the moment pillar that kind of sets the stage for everything else. Be in the moment with Nancy or someone when they share this news. Express your gratitude, share their joy, view it from their perspective. Hopefully the pillars can help you do all of those things.
Thank you, Alex, so much. That was great reflection and discussion. So glad you were able to have a follow-up session here. So we are going to go back on and hear from our sponsors again from 10:45 to 11. And then from 11 to 11:15, you'll hear from Stelter of how to help create the world you want to see. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
There's good in our world. Between the pain, the barriers, the suffering and struggles of men, women, children, animals, plants, our Earth, can be found people working hard to make life kinder, easier, fairer, more meaningful, fulfilling. And standing beside those extraordinary people, the charities, visionaries, change makers, is you. You, just one person, the face who looks back in the mirror, the eyes determined, bright, open, talents ready to be put to work, passion, so much work, so much potential, so much change to be made, an overwhelming amount of need. And at Stelter, you take that individuality, that subject matter expertise, and combine it with the force of your colleagues, your peers, at the call to arms of our nonprofit partners, to collaborate, to create, to advocate, to celebrate, to resonate. And work no longer looks like it used to. It isn't the thing you fear you will waste your daylight on, that you'll give your best years to, that is burning you out as the candlelight wanes. Work is different. The work we do matters to more than you, to more than your colleagues, to more than the company. It makes a difference for more than 1,400 nonprofits, and because of that, it matters for them, for him and her, for life and meaning, for this and that, for our local communities, our families. Every day, the clients you advise, the emails you craft, the mailings you design, the messaging you strategize, the campaigns you weave together, the things that look so little in the moment. Expand, empower, inspire. They accumulate on top of one another to make a huge difference for the things you care about in this world. You make a real difference.
I'm very happy that I can support Iowa PBS at the level that I can, and I enjoy watching the programming. It makes me feel good that there is quality entertainment and that entertainment educates at the same time that it entertains.
6-on-6 basketball is one of probably the best program I've ever seen. I love the local programming that Iowa PBS does. Roseanne and I talked about this quite a bit. What were we going to do with our estate, because we have no heirs? Supporting Iowa PBS with our estate is going to provide more benefit to more people than anything else that we had discussed. So that's kind of when we decided that that's what we were going to do.
Live on by including the Iowa PBS Foundation in your will.
We realized pretty quickly that everyone's worlds were going to change very radically.
We're confronting need on a scale that we've never experienced before.
Too often, the marginalized communities are the first to be abandoned.
They've lost their work, they've lost their care.
If we want to be a society or a community that gets through things together, we cannot leave anyone behind.
first calls we got was from folks from the Disaster Recovery Fund team.
It was a quick response. I mean, we're talking about within 30 days, there is money in the bank to say, we can help.
None of us is as good as all of us.
I think we've all learned that we're better together.
We're in this for the long haul. Better together, better forever.
There is a way to boost your retirement income and your support of Iowa PBS at the same time. A charitable gift annuity. If you are 65 or older and can make a donation of $10,000 or more to the Iowa PBS Foundation, we'll pay you a fixed amount for life. For a personalized illustration, call Rob Hilbert at 800-728-2828.
You can reduce your federal tax bill by supporting Iowa PBS. If you meet the minimum age, you can make a gift to friends of Iowa PBS directly from your IRA account. Transfer all or part of your IRA required minimum distribution and pay no income taxes on the transfer. To learn more, contact Rob Hilbert at 800-728-2828.
We don't need no fancy name tags. We don't need no conference hall. No catered lunch outside the classroom. No fussing with the thermostat at all. Hey, no fussing with that thermostat at all. Come and join us for our conference virtual. Come and join us for our conference virtual. Come and learn from prudent experts, including Tom Ahern, Patience Boudreau, and our very own Johnny Hayes, and gain much needed wherewithal from the Zen master herself, Alexandra Brovey. Watching from the kitchen or your bedroom, wearing sweats or overalls, or hey, we don't care if you put on clothes at all. That's the beauty of our conference virtual. That's the beauty of our conference virtual.
Why do I love what I do? It's amazing to see the work that our clients are doing, the life-changing impact that they're having around the world, around their communities. But what excites me even more is being honored and blessed to work with such great people day to day that truly care about their clients and care about their work. And while I know it's cliche, it is truly an extended family here at Stelter.
Clients that stands out for me is Save the Redwoods. I am the design partner on this account, and the other day I'm scrolling through Instagram and one of their posts comes up on my feed and I start feeling, I'm like tearing up, my heart's racing. It was about Alder Creek, and this was a property that this organization had worked so hard at purchasing and protecting, and this post was about how they had forest fires on this land. And I am like, heartbroken, you know, but this post is all about how hopeful they are. And even though they can't get into the property, the trees are very resilient. And then I'm like learning all these things about forest fires and redwood forests. And I'm just so inspired by their whole mission. And it just reinforces how much I love the work that we do here. I feel like their mission ends up being our mission. It really reinvigorates me to just keep helping them raise money so they can keep up the amazing work that they do.
Why do I love working at Stelter? It gives me pride. I am so proud to work with organizations like the Los Angeles Regional Food Bank, the Oregon Shakespeare Festival, the Marin Humane Society, and the Glaucoma Research Foundation. While they differ so much in their individual mission and impact, they individually change the world around them. Where else but Stelter can I have such a positive impact in so many causes?
Why do I love what I do? Every day, we get to work with nonprofit partners who are making the world a better place and help inspire their donors to create a legacy that perpetuates their values. What could be more meaningful than that?
I do, it's very humbling to think at the end of the day, the work that I do feeds children, saves lives, helps animals, and educates future generations, and ultimately makes the world around us a better place.
Why do I love what I do? I believe that we have a moral responsibility to leave this world in a better state than we found it. Knowing that my work provides resources to organizations across the country to help share their mission is what keeps my drive and passion going.
There's good in our world. Between the pain, the barriers, the suffering and struggles of men, women, children, animals, plants, our earth, can be found people working hard to make life kinder, easier, fairer, more meaningful, fulfilling. And standing beside those extraordinary people, the charities, visionaries, change makers, is you. You, just one person, the face who looks back in the mirror, the eyes determined, bright, open, talents ready to be put to work, passion, so much work, so much potential, so much change to be made, an overwhelming amount of need. And at Stelter, you take that individuality, that subject matter expertise, and combine it with the force of your colleagues, your peers, at the call to arms of our nonprofit partners, to collaborate, to create, to advocate, to celebrate, to resonate. And work no longer looks like it used to. It isn't the thing you fear you will waste your daylight on, that you'll give your best years to, that is burning you out as the candlelight wanes. Work is different. The work we do matters to more than you, to more than your colleagues, to more than the company. It makes a difference for more than 1,400 nonprofits, and because of that, it matters for them, for him and her, for life and meaning, for this and that, for our local communities, our families. Every day, the clients you advise, the emails you craft, the mailings you design, the messaging you strategize, the campaigns you weave together, the things that look so little in the moment. Expand, empower, inspire. They accumulate on top of one another to make a huge difference for the things you care about in this world. You make a real difference.
Okay, friends, good morning again. Thanks to our friends at Stelter for putting together that compelling video. Very good, very much appreciated that content. And kind of a good little feel good. I feel like I'm gonna have that song stuck in my head all day now. We are going to now turn to either Conference Room A, Patience Boudreau, with Planual Giving, a framework for marketing plan gifts, or in Conference Room B, Tom Ahern, who is our keynote for tomorrow morning, talking to people my age, 73, about charitable bequests. Both these speakers are excellent. I've had a chance to chat with both of them in preparation for today's workshop, and really you'd be well suited to either of them. A friendly reminder that Conference Room A is being recorded perpetually this morning. Conference Room B will not be recorded. There is going to be a release of all of the PowerPoint presentations, all of the speaker materials, all of the e-resources that have been shared. Johnny Hayes had some, for example, in a big slide deck at the end of hers in the last breakout. So everything will be shared tomorrow afternoon after the conclusion of the conference. So I think if you're staying in conference, I will let Barb, our colleague, Zoom everybody who belongs in Room B, Zoom them out. I'll be hopping over to Room B myself, but staying here in Room A, again, is Patience Boudreau, and Stephen from Crescendo will be handling the introduction for Patience. So in just a second, as we are all getting Zoomed, again, I just love that verb. I don't know if anybody else is with me. I love it. Get zoomed. So as Room B gets zoomed away, I will see everybody in Room B. For those of you who are staying, here comes Stephen from Crescendo to introduce Patience Boudreau.
All right. I think I'm supposed to wait a minute for everybody to zoom in and zoom out. All right. All right. Well, I hope I've allowed enough time for people to zoom. Let's make sure. All right. Well, hello, everyone. My name is Stephen Walker. I work for Crescendo Interactive. We are a proud sponsor of today's conference. Very happy to be here. But do definitely look forward to seeing everybody in person again real soon. And just quick shout out to Ryan, he's doing such a great job. But a little bit on our speaker, Patience, like me, works in the Los Angeles area and has been a resident of Southern California for quite some time. Patience earned a BA from Johns Hopkins University in 2004. And I am sure all of us are excited to hear her message for breaking down silos and integrating today. So please help me welcome Patience.
Thank you, Stephen. I appreciate it. I'm gonna share my screen so that we're all kind of looking at the same thing. I warned the team in the tech rehearsal that I am used to presenting this with less content in a longer period of time. So I'm afraid I'm not going to have time for questions at the end. So I fully encourage everyone to ask questions as we're going along. I think this is a really good presentation based off of what's we've heard Planual in Alex's talk. She was talking about this idea of kind of integrated marketing, and I hope that this is a valuable resource for everyone. We were also talking about the snow in Iowa, and so I thought I'd share, it could be worse. In California right now, I'm in Southern California at Loma Linda University Health. Our forecast today was smoke. And so it could be worse than snow. We've had this for about 3 months where you can kind of see a haze if you look in the distance. But it is finally cooling down because we did have smoke and 100 degrees. But really, it's my pleasure today to spend the next about 40 minutes with you all helping to reframe our understanding of how we can partner with colleagues internally or combine our efforts when we work in small shops around this plannual idea. And really the essence of this is that the future of plan giving marketing is integrated, not separated. And so I want to kind of do a virtual poll. I don't want to use the technology. I want to physically see hands if possible, or feel free to use the reaction button. If you are in a planned giving team, there's more than one of you thinking about planned giving on a daily basis. Okay, if you're in a one-person planned giving shop, you're the one person that's focused on planned giving, but there are other fundraisers in your operation. Okay, see Amanda responded, thank you. And then the do all types of fundraising shop. You are a one-man operation and you're already tackling the planned giving, the annual giving, the major gifts for your organization. Okay, I see a lot of thumbs up and clapping. So this is really great for you. Some of this is going to be, I don't want to assume we all have the same understanding of what an annual giving office does. So I do want to kind of just cover the basics. So annual giving is about broad communications, mail, email, phone. It tends to focus on simpler gifts, renewable gifts. It's gifts of cash, not gifts which really serve as a solution to the financial needs of donors. And annual giving officers are hired for their expertise in marketing, in systems and data analytics, in kind of the cyclical nature of their work. And that's very, very different from a planned giving officer. Annual giving is all about participation and renewability, and that's not as much the case in a planned giving situation. Planned giving, you're really hired because you are good at personally outreaching and interacting with donors. You are hired because you understand complex gifts and the merits of those gifts for your individual donors. You have technical expertise, legal expertise, and you're really focused on relationship building. And that's excellent. But annual giving is all about a calendar of solicitation that they determine based off of kind of when people seem to respond or when the needs of the institution are high. Whereas planned giving is all about responding to a donor's schedule, and the donor determines your timeline. Very different ways of structuring your work. So in some ways, when we think about plannual giving, it's really ideal for small to medium shops because they're flexible enough to really kind of adapt and change and try some new things. And the goal is to separate and amplify two very different types of communication: broad-based, which is kind of about lead generation and behavioral pattern creation, and specific communication where you're interacting one-on-one with a donor. I want to put it out there. I represent an organization, Loma Linda University Health, which it plays in a lot of fields. We are healthcare, we are education, we do social services, we are a religious organization. And I can tell you, this works with our patient donors, it works with our alumni donors, it works with our community donors. So don't feel like just because I am currently in a fairly large shop that it couldn't work for you, because this plannual giving idea actually really came up when I was in a much smaller shop. So I want to kind of gauge the group again about how would you describe where your program is for planned giving right now. Are you integrated? Are you already doing plannual giving and you're in this just because you forgot to put B in front of your name? I'm not seeing hands, that's good. You're all, oh, one of you is unintentionally here. Are you in a traditional shop where you have silos? And I'm a planned giving officer, I focus on planned giving marketing, and I sometimes talk at staff meetings with the annual giving person. Okay. Are you a startup? Are you just now starting to get into planned giving because your board has identified it as a need? Or, okay, we have some, a few people there. Or are you in a van down by the river like Chris Farley? Okay, so this is an interesting situation because I don't have a good sense of where all of you are. And this is where if we were in person, it would be a lot more interactive. So go with me on this journey. When I was at Redlands, our structure was like this. When I first got there, we had an associate vice president who was over all the fundraising staff. He had 3 direct reports. This associate vice president was Ray Watts, who is now at Claremont McKenna College. And if you've ever had a chance to hear Ray speak, he is amazing. Normally, I do this presentation with Ray, but I did not think when I signed on to do this that I could get Ray to go to Iowa because he had just started a new job. And now that we're virtual, I did not think I could get him to sign up for this because his team is still working virtually. So our director of planned giving was responsible for complex planned gift solicitation. He also did our planned giving marketing. He also handled referrals that he received from major gift officers. This was a model where major gift officers, if someone expressed even the slightest interest in planned gifts, that relationship went to the director of planned giving. I think we should all kind of recognize that's not an ideal situation. A lot of relationship has been built with that major gift officer, and then to lose that relationship, it disincentivizes a major gift officer to actually make that handoff. And also it puts the planned giving officer in a position where they're having to rebuild all of this kind of institutional knowledge that should, instead of partnering. The director of annual giving played no role in planned giving. And then I'm gonna move on and kind of just share, we had a budget-driven restructuring. We needed to kind of cut a budget, a full-time employee position. And so we decided to cut our director of planned giving and move him into another role, and instead had the marketing move to the director of annual giving and really have an integration in all the offices, not just the marketing, where everybody felt like they had some ownership of generating leads, of asking for planned gifts. And we're gonna talk through some of the ways we were able to work this out well. We're also gonna talk through some of the challenges we had when we did this. But I think based on the fact that many of you are in smaller shops, you're probably already doing some of this. But I also think chances are you can take a few tidbits that help you maybe with your board explaining kind of how these things interact well. So if you've ever heard from a prospect, I only hear from you when you want money, or if you've ever learned that a piece dropped from another office in the same week, I can tell you that a plannual giving model helps you avoid some of these things. So when you have annual and planned giving sending solicitations, oftentimes they weren't communicating. And so they might have things drop in we didn't have them drop in the same week, but they would have like 2 mailings in the same month. And it was confusing for donors because they felt like we were wasting their money on soliciting them. It also it didn't allow us to have as much stewardship conversations. And we were always asking them for money. We were asking them to come to events and sending them an alumni magazine as well, but that wasn't their perception, and donor perception is reality. The data actually backed us up on this plannual giving model because we did an analysis of our donor pool through target analytics. I don't think our population is radically different from other populations. So even if you don't have the funds to spend on doing a prospect analysis with target analytics, this should hold fairly true for your donor populations. On a scale of 1 to 1,000, with 1,000 being the most likely to make a bequest gift, we looked at people who were considered very likely, so 800 or higher in their score. And if we just looked at that population, people most likely to make a bequest gift, and then also looked at their score for the people's likelihood to make an annual fund gift, we saw that there was a 78% overlap between the people most likely to make a bequest gift and most likely to make an annual gift. This totally makes sense because our most likely planned giving donors are consistent annual fund donors, but sometimes having the data to back up your instincts is helpful. It also kind of helped us demonstrate internally that the idea that a donor belongs to planned giving or to major gifts or to annual giving was totally invalid. It was actually hurting the work of multiple offices to say, we're only going to talk to that donor about planned giving, because then they weren't getting the impact stories that annual giving was sending. If they went to major gifts and we were taking them out of annual fund solicitations, we were hurting that donor's ongoing donor relationship. It wasn't just bequest likelihood that proved kind of to be aligned. We also looked at people who are very likely to make an annuity gift, and that there was a 61% overlap of people who were both very likely to make an annuity gift and very likely to make an annual fund gift. This helped us generate kind of a sense internally that we, in annual giving, could play a role in cultivating planned giving and major gift prospects, that we could help tell donor stories that led to people making outright cash gifts during their lives that would benefit the donors and benefit the institution. This also required us, though, to interact with our colleagues to help them understand who the best planned giving prospects are and what types of things do those people respond to, what types of messages, what types of language. We've heard about Russell James, and I think Nathan had mentioned him from Stelter. And his data really says words matter. And so we tried to help our annual giving colleagues understand what types of phrasing and language could they use to best approach donors. I will also say it wasn't just this integration of marketing that made annual giving successful at Redlands. We actually changed the metrics for gift officers and for annual giving officers. Before, they weren't getting credit when planned giving was successful. So it was really this idea, you turn them over and you knew that the institution benefited, but you personally did not. And sometimes you had built this relationship over years. So we did use metrics to help drive some behavior. Annual giving got credit for leads that they had generated. They were engaged in those gift conversations. Major gift officers were also getting credit for any dollars that came in as a part of that campaign. And it changed people's willingness to interact with the Office of Planned Giving and with planned giving donors, which honestly, they were a little intimidated by to begin with. I will also say, and we'll talk about this later, we did more educational efforts to help make sure that we weren't just kind of saying, okay, you're responsible for helping to generate leads, helping to generate gifts, but you're on your own about how you go about and do that. We talked to every single donor on the very first visit that we did in person. So this is really about how major and planned giving work together, about what we called the 3 circles of giving. So we basically said annual giving is the gifts you're giving today. Everyone can play in this circle. And this is something that you give as you are able to. And we think of this as about 1x. Special giving is really your investment in this institution. It's you kind of leading the charge for programs that you are passionate about, whether that's scholarships, whether that's athletics, whether that's an academic program. And deferred giving, forever giving, is really about you saying, what's the legacy you want to have at our institution? And we also think everybody can play in this forever circle. Not everybody's going to be able to be in a position to invest in our institution during their lives, but everybody could make a gift as a part of their legacy. Out here in Southern California, we have a gentleman, Jim Normandin, who teaches as a part of the CSPG program, who has this brilliant kind of introduction. He really focuses on financial planning and planned giving. And he talked to donors when he worked for, I think he worked for Methodist Hospital. And he would say, would your kids be okay if they got 95% of your estate? And every single one of his prospects would say, yes, my kids could be fine with 75%, and that allowed him to open the door for this idea that even 2% to each of your charities could make a huge difference for those charities without impacting negatively your children. So we allowed major gift officers this opportunity to share this with donors and say, When you see these 3 circles, which of these do you think you could play in? Which ones of these do you see yourself as an annual donor? Do you see yourself as an investor in this institution? Could you envision yourself making a legacy gift? So some of the ways, I don't want to assume we're all doing all of these things. So one of the most basic ways you can enact plannual giving is by adding planned giving asks to your donor site, to your solicitation pieces. So this is an example of the questions that we started to integrate into each of our giving sites. So there was just a section. You didn't have to answer it, you didn't have to click a box, but it allowed people to say whether or not they had already included Redlands in their will or estate plan, and whether they wanted information about tax smart gift ideas. It was a pretty simple thing, but we also tried to normalize some of the language around planned giving within this. We tried not to use as complicated or jargony items. In annual giving, we also started doing a lot of segmenting based off of age. And in theory, we were doing this with some of our reunion communications, but we actually started segmenting the types of testimonials that were in a solicitation. So I'm going to read this in case you guys can't see it, but this testimonial went to people who were 65 and older. And it was from someone who was in our Leadership Giving Society and had done a charitable remainder trust. So in 2000, I made a great decision. I set up a charitable remainder trust that provides lifetime income for me and my wife. It also supports Redlands. Since then, I've continued to support U of R as a President Circle donor and volunteer because Redlands provides many personal and intellectual growth opportunities for students. So this is a really great testimonial, in part because it highlights the holistic relationship within philanthropy. It clarifies that planned gifts are not the last gifts you make to an institution, which is a common misconception. He made this charitable remainder trust and continues to give. I really like cool kid stories. So people modeling the behavior we want other donors to exemplify. And so Frank is a cool kid for Redlands, and him saying, you know, I volunteer, I'm still giving actively. I have this gift that really, it starts with what does the gift do for him and his wife? And then it talks about what it does for Redlands. We also added these kind of simpler language asks to our reply device. Please send me information about gifts that pay you income or bequests or other tax smart gift ideas. And a lot of people have these on their reply devices, but how many of you have them on the front of your device? I get a lot of solicitations because I give to a lot of places, and almost always, if these questions are on a reply device, it's on the backside. And I look because I'm in fundraising, but most of our donors don't look at the backside of their reply devices. They fill out the front or check the box that says how much they're giving, include a check or write their credit card, and they're done. We actually put these questions on the front where they were interacting the most with our piece. And I think that really made a difference because we did start to generate leads. With Stelter, we did a newsletter. And so it was a planned giving newsletter. The stories in here are mostly about planned gifts, but we really led off the newsletter with a very annual giving story, which is about reunion. Reunion generated about 40% of what Redlands' annual fund raised in a year. It was all 40% of gifts were from reunion donors. And so we told a story about reunions, but we also highlighted in this story how planned giving played a part in helping reunion classes meet their goals, and how a donor could use a planned gift to help their class reach an attainable goal. All the imagery that we included in here was from reunion events, and so it had that kind of celebratory feel. We also had a reply device that asked questions about impact areas. We were going into a campaign, and this was something that allowed us to say, what parts of the university did they like the most? What inspired them? It also asked them for a small testimonial that said, why do you support the University of Redlands? And it also had a specific ask for the Redlands Fund. So we normally would do these surveys as a postcard and people would mail it in. And we decided to do it in an envelope because we were asking for some more personal information from them. And that storytelling element, we thought they might want to make private, but that also gave them the opportunity to include a check with their when they return the survey. And we highlighted the online giving site on this survey if people wanted to visit it. We did another e-newsletter, or not an e-newsletter, we did another newsletter with Stelter about 3 months later or 6 months later. And in this one, we were actually a lot clearer about our Redlands Fund ask. We gave a lot more of the space to a testimonial because we found that the testimonials we got from the first time really did help our annual giving colleagues identify some new voices for their pieces. But we actually included an option to give via credit card on this survey, which the last one had just said, oh, you can include a check if you want. This one said you can do a check, but you can also give via credit card. And the results were pretty compelling. Our first newsletter, we received 5 times the number of responses than we had to our previous plan giving mailings. And 9 of those responses had a gifts. So the previous 5 pieces before this newsletter were just brochures where people could say, oh, I want to learn more about charitable gift annuities. I want to learn more about bequests. And we had never received a gift in response. That second newsletter where we start to do this, where we asked more about the testimonials and we had a clearer ask about credit cards, about a quarter of the pieces that were returned included a gift. The interest questions helped us with our campaign priorities. And when you ask people for testimonials about why do you love this institution, it helps reinforce when they get to the next section that's about, hey, do you want to make a gift? They've just been reminded of all these wonderful things about their alma mater. And now we're asking, would you like to make a gift? It has this psychological reinforcement of, well, yeah, I want to make a gift. So that idea, we've talked about surveys throughout the conference so far today. Several people have advocated them as an alternative to making outright ask right now. And I think there's a lot of validity to that. Asking people about their positive memories. Alex was talking about the idea about kind of focusing on positivity. Asking them for those memories gives us a chance to then reinforce when the gift conversation comes up that, oh yeah, I do have a lot of positive associations with your institution. We also identified some new opportunities that we wanted to match segments to stories with more specific action items. So we were going to be launching something for athletics, and could we talk about specific planned gifts that had been able to benefit athletics? And we were further refining how we used familiar language versus technical jargon-y language. I can also share that as a result of these 2 newsletters, we received 13 new notices of bequest gifts or life insurance gifts. So these are people who are not currently in our legacy society, which we called the Courtner Society, but told us that they were. And of those 13 people, 9 of them were not assigned to a gift officer. So this was an annual giving effort that was a hybrid. It was this plannual giving model where we used some annual giving language, we used plan giving language, and we generated 9 new really solid leads. And those leads went to major gift officers who then partnered with our associate vice president to really make those asks for planned giving. Other plannual giving ideas are consecutive donor societies. So these are often run through annual giving offices. The benefit to planned giving is that the more often somebody gives, the more likely they are to include a planned gift. So if we can create societies that incentivize this kind of consecutive donor behavior, we're further building up our pool of planned giving donors. I will say there's a danger here that if somebody drops off 1 year and your consecutive donor society is not adaptable enough to account for that, and it can be really hard, because then they're no longer in the society, and what's their motivation to give next year? I mean, to make a difference, yes, but what we actually did was we developed this idea of a consecutive donor society that was, had you given 8 of the last 10 years. So you could miss a year here or there and still be in the society. We also started training our volunteers to discuss planned giving, to endorse planned giving. We talked to them about their own planned gifts and said, you know, you've already included Redlands in your plans. Would you be willing to share that as a part of your conversations when you're doing solicitation outreach? We also trained them to identify leads when they were making volunteer calls. So if you're talking to someone and they're saying, yeah, you know, we don't have time to get back to campus because we're managing all these rental properties, that should be a cue for that volunteer to then tell our office, hey, you know, this is the conversation. You might want to follow up with this person. We actually had our student callers start making a very light ask. So as a part of their phone-a-thon efforts, they would come to a point and they would ask, have you ever considered including Redlands in your will or trust? And it was that simple a question. If the person said yes, they said, oh, wonderful, thank you so much. If they said no, they said, that's fine. And they moved on with the conversation. And then we would take that lead, and anyone who said yes, we would try and follow up with them. We would try and make sure that they were getting some personal specific outreach from us. And then we also found that we had some people who were interested in seeing how they could create a planned gift that basically supported the annual fund. So could we make a gift that creates an endowment that basically pays money to the annual fund so that their years of consecutive giving went on and on? It didn't happen often, but we had several people who made this request, and we were able to work with them to do this. So that's totally benefiting the annual fund. Some of our challenges were budget. So if you are not in a one-person shop where you're looking at everything as a whole, this is a hard one, because you're asking annual fund officers to incorporate planned giving messaging, in part so that you as a planned giving officer don't have to manage that messaging. But that doesn't mean you just get to reuse that budget however you want. You should also be offering them some of your budget money. So when Annual Giving was working with Stelter on those newsletters, we didn't expect Annual Giving to pay for that out of their budget. We paid for it out of the planned giving budget. We actually just transferred them some of the money. Habits are really hard. So when new people come on board, it gives you a chance to reset with those people. But people who've been there when we did have the siloed structure, they weren't used to reaching out to somebody else to help them do this. Annual Giving wasn't used to having to do as much segmenting. And it did require some changes, and we, as I get to later, metrics was one of the ways we tried to incentivize people to change their habits. But I'll also say, going into a campaign, it's really hard to reset metrics because there's all these new goals that are coming into play. Structure was hard. As silly as this sounds, we were in 2 different buildings. Annual Giving was in our alumni house. Planned Giving, or the major gifts team, was in the main administration building, and just the physical separation of the spaces made it harder to coordinate. When I left in 2019, but in about 2017, they moved all of the offices back into the same space. And this annual giving effort started to move even smoother because people were having casual conversations about, oh, we're working on a mailing right now. What ideas do you have for how we could make this more blended? Silos are always hard. And so that was definitely a challenge, and just recognizing the silos that you have. speaking of silos, I wanted to kind of focus, we have some time left, on how to maybe rethink some of the silos between major gifts and planned giving. So this isn't plannual in terms of the integrated marketing, but it's plannual in terms of breaking down silos. So COVID-19 happened, and it fundamentally changed the way we're able to interact with donors. We at Loma Linda wanted to create a systematic way to connect personally with people we had identified as a part of a prospect research effort. We kind of classified about 3,000 of our donors into priority 1 through 7, priority 1 being our highest, top, most likely planned giving donors. Priority 7 still being fairly likely because we still have about 150, 200,000 people who don't have any priority status. And so we developed a 3-step plan that did not require in-person solicitation, which is our default model for planned giving outreach here at Loma Linda. These 3 steps were a very customized letter and survey, which provided a foundation to share estate planning services that we have available. We are very lucky here. We have an internal trust office that will help people draft their living trust, which in California you really do need to have. It will, we manage our own CGAs. We're able to offer donor advised funds. We do socially screened investing because we're an SDA organization. And so all of these are services that we offer as a part of our planned giving effort that we weren't sure our donors really knew about. So instead of doing a mass solicitation to these 3,000 people, we decided we're going to tackle them one at a time. And we had a template letter that if we had had a conversation, we used a calling program through Ruffalo Noel Levitz, I think I'm pronouncing that right, in 2016 and 17. And so if they talked to someone and the person said at that time, I have an estate plan in place and Loma Linda's not in there, we took out language in this letter that was about, have you included us in your estate plan? And instead we focused the letter on life income gifts or tax smart giving ideas. If nobody had ever had a planned giving conversation with them, we gave them a whole menu of options that we could help them with. And we also included a survey with this. The survey asked kind of them to identify their relationship with us as an institution. We pre-filled a lot of it, but we also gave them the chance to update their information, update their relationships. But then it also said, how much of your annual giving do you designate for Loma Linda? They could say less than 25%, 25%, up to nearly all of my giving goes to Loma Linda. We asked them if they had already included us in their estate plan or if they were interested in, or if they would not consider it. We asked them if there were other types of gifts they wanted more information about. Tax smart giving, life income gifts. There was about 8 different options. So we did survey them. We had this highly customized letter. We then planned to follow that up with an email that really echoed this and tried to establish a time when we could talk to them on the phone. And then we actually did call people after this. So it was this 3-step, we're going to mail you something, we're going to email you something, we're going to call you, because we wanted to be able to say at the end of 2020, when we're working through this list, that we had done our level best to try and connect with donors. And that we had given it our all, we had tried multiple avenues of connecting with them. For unassigned prospects, we had planned giving officers like myself. We began drafting these customized versions of letters and surveys. And it allowed us a chance to kind of internally and private work through some of the kinks of this process. We are not normally set up to do this type of thing. It helped that our office did come back to work fairly early in the process, but most of our major gift colleagues do not work from the office. But as we were doing this, if we were drafting a letter for someone who had been giving to the School of Dentistry hygiene program for years and years, we actually reached out to a gift officer who might not already have a relationship to say, you know, do you want to co-sign this letter? Do you have any updates about this hygiene program that we could include? And so it gave us a chance to kind of help them understand what we were doing and that we were trying to help their programs. Once we had been through the cycle of all 3 steps and kind of worked through the kinks, we actually started working with major gift officers to say, here's who is in your portfolio that has a priority status. Let's rank them. Who do you want? Who's your top people that you want to get a letter out? Who's your high priority? Who's your medium? Who aren't you concerned about getting a letter out to? Have you already had a conversation with these people that is not captured in the system somewhere? And then we would take those notes and start tackling them 5 per gift officer each week. We have 3 planned giving officers that were doing these letters. And we would co-sign them. So they would come from both the gift officer and from the Office of Planned Giving, so that they understood that there was a team here that was ready to partner with them. And then we internally created a tickler system for how did we move from step 1 to step 2 to step 3. If you are in an office where there's more than one fundraiser, or where you have some institutional record keeping, I have every institution I've worked at, and I'm going on 4 now, I have come across people that I'm like, why didn't anyone follow up on this? Someone said, oh yeah, I've included you in your plans. And oh, I thank them for including us, but nobody ever documented it. Nobody ever got them into the Heritage Society. And so our goal was to create a system so that things didn't fall through the cracks. And our major gift officers really appreciated this, because the structure of all of our work has changed so much that they were really looking for something to help kind of cue them that wasn't travel, because that's normally how our solicitation is driven, is by where we're going and who we're meeting with. So within the first month, we had sent 78 letters and surveys. That might not seem like a lot, but we're going to talk about some of the results of this in kind of actual numbers. We had sent 49 email follow-ups, because remember, you have a letter and then there's a delay and you send an email. Sometimes also we found that we didn't have emails for people. So when we had our survey, if we didn't have an email, we left it blank and they were able to fill in an email. We've partnered with 10 of our gift officers on letters. Some of these were letters with their prospects, because at the end of that first month, we had just started working with gift officers. Some of these were people that we were unassigned, but we thought maybe a gift officer could be a really good partner. We had 10 qualifications just from the results of the surveys. So these are people who said, yes, I'm interested in learning more, or yes, I've already included you. We also included people who said we get nearly all of their annual giving. We considered that a qualification that we should be following up on. We also got 7 disqualifications, people who told us they didn't want to discuss or weren't interested in plans. And for us, because we have such a huge population, when you include our patients and our alumni from our 8 colleges, a disqualification is really valuable. Knowing somebody is not interested in a planned gift can be really transformational to how we prioritize them. We're not going to ignore them totally, but we are going to reframe how we think about their giving and when asks should be made. Non-quantitative was that we really started to build this even stronger relationship with relationship managers, which is what we call our major gift officers. They were reminded that estate gifts could be really good options when people have limited out-of-pocket capacity. So right now, a lot of people are getting a lot of asks from a variety of organizations because of COVID-19. And we were hearing from people, you know, I'd like to give, but my kids lost their job and I'm trying to support them. Planned gifts, talking to people about including us in their will or trust, was a conversation we could have that wasn't about out-of-pocket giving. And it was a conversation relationship managers were happy to be able to have and have that reminder. Relationship managers also started asking us, hey, can you do another refresher? We actually do a boot camp about every 2 to 3 years with our gift officers. It's a 8 different segments. It takes about, we allow about 50 minutes per session. They vary everything from what is a charitable remainder trust and a charitable gift annuity. That's only one session. To we spend a full 50 minutes on donor advised funds. We spend a full 50 minutes on IRA giving, because what the reality of our work is that 80 to 90% of our gifts are bequests. So we want to spend the most time on the gifts that have the most impact. But we also found that IRA giving and donor advised fund giving, that benefited our annual fund colleagues more than anyone else. That are gift officers, knowing that somebody has a donor advised fund, makes them kind of more charitable potentially, that the average size of a donor advised fund is about $160,000 in 2019, I believe, that they might have an asset like that out there that's available for giving. That was something that we wanted relationship managers to know. That course, they actually asked us to renew it. And right now, where we're not having to coordinate people's travel schedules, this was the perfect time. So we were able to do that boot camp again at their request. Gift officers also, we're wrapping up. Gift officers also started coming to us with people who did not have a priority rating. And that was really valuable because all the kind of data prospect research in the world doesn't necessarily help you if it's inaccurate, and gift officers knew that better. So we have 16 gifts we're working on. They would total about 21 million if they were funded. I'm gonna, full disclosure, there's one gift in here that's about $9 million. That if that happens, that's wonderful, but it also skews this number quite higher. The average is not 16 divided by 21 or 21 million divided by 16. And all of these are partnerships with relationship managers, and they're a mix of a variety of types of gifts. I'm going to give you my contact information. Feel free to reach out if I can answer any questions. I hope that this is useful for all of you as just a reminder of some of the creative thinking and partnerships that can happen between planned giving, major gifts, and annual giving. I think people are starting to join us again, so I'm going to stop my slideshow. If people have questions, I can look. Thank you, patience. What are recommendations when we don't have birth dates? Have started asking over the past 5 years, but prior it did not. Oh, so I'm a little bit on the younger side for a planned giving officer. I'm just about 40. And I will tell you, even if I get a planned giving message, if it might not be useful to me right now, I still tell my mom about it. So I say you might as well tell everybody. Our youngest planned giving bequest intention donor at Redlands was 22 years old. He graduated, got a job, and made Redlands a beneficiary on his retirement account because his parents didn't need the money. He didn't have kids. He didn't have a spouse. So just because you don't have a birth date doesn't mean you can't talk to everybody in your portfolio. Should be able to be talked to about bequest giving. So I hope that answers it. If you can get birth dates, I will tell you True People Search is a one-on-one. If you're interacting with someone and you don't have a birth date, you might could look them up on True People Search and find a birth date. That's not a good plan if you have a 5,000 person list, but I think everyone could be talked to about bequest giving, maybe not CGAs, not IRA giving, but even if you tell somebody who's 30 about IRA giving, they might tell their parents because they know their parents are making gifts and that they have an IRA, and it's a tax smart idea. I don't see any other questions. Any more? No. I'll also share, we at Loma Linda use Crescendo to run our illustrations. And that's one of the things that we started doing when we did these customized letters, is that if there had been a conversation, oh, they asked about CGAs, when we sent them the letter, we also said, you know, it's been a few years since we sent you an illustration. We ran a new illustration for them to just kind of highlight that for them. When we did those, we also use Stelter at Loma Linda for our website and for our e-communications and for our solicitation mailings. And at the start of the pandemic, we did a CGA mailing that actually had, we received one of our larger CGAs about $250,000 as a result of that mailing in the midst of the pandemic. And then that person has since decided he wants to do a life insurance gift. So people are actively giving. I don't think you have to abstain from solicitation. I just think you have to be thoughtful and kind of use Alex's Zen model to tailor your communications.
Thank you to Patience, and thank you to everybody who hopped back over after hearing from Tom in the other room. We will, with gratitude, say thanks again to Patience and to the rest of our speakers from today: Alex, Johnny, John Severson, Tom, and all the others who joined us this morning. Won't you use the reactions feature with us and your hands and wave and give shout outs to our speakers and presenters this morning. We very much appreciated their expertise. We do want to yield the balance of our time together today to a titan, if you will, in the industry. I think we have remarks teed up for our friend Susan Scharnberg. I think that we have a brief introduction ahead of Susan's remarks. So do we have that? Okay, so we sorry about that. We'll do this on the fly. So Susan Scharnberg is exiting her successful and storied and written about and truly, honestly, you know, super impressive tenure at Iowa PBS at the risk of you know, damaging vanity. She had been there for a lot of years. I will let her disclose whatever she wants about her tenure. And, you know, we just really are excited that somebody who was in the fundraising profession, the nonprofit leadership sphere, the community influence and community advocate sphere. I think a lot of us who are younger honestly really aspire to be like Susan, and you know, we'll continue leading our careers in such a way that Susan has laid out a path for us. Nonprofit fundraising, nonprofit fund development, philanthropy is starting to be more defined, and folks aren't falling into the profession perhaps as much as they used to, and it's in part because of leaders like Susan that there is now a chart and a path for folks to have a viable career path. So without further piling on, we will yield the balance of our time today with Susan, who will talk a little bit about her time in the nonprofit sector as a fund development officer and leader.
Oh, thank you, Ryan. I appreciate that. I won't take a lot of your time. It's really tough to follow Tom Ahern in speaking. He's always been one of the giants, and I've always enjoyed what he had to say and tried to put it into my work. This is really just my effort to say thank you to all the great members of this profession. I had originally planned, of course, that we would all be together, but that was not able to happen. So this is the next best thing. I guess you could say I was buying my parting shot, if you will. You know, there have really been two professional organizations that have been my school from the very beginning. And I'm old, as Ryan said. I've been working in this field for nearly 4 decades. So I have seen some changes over that time. When I began at the American Lung Association of Iowa, my predecessor was actually Van Harden. It might be hard to believe, but he decided to go back into radio, which I think was probably a good choice. And I was fortunate enough to take his place. Now, you have to know that this was a very different time in development. Most of the fundraisers at that time were older men. They were sort of the elder statesmen of their organizations. And all we had at that point was a very new AFP chapter. It was actually called NSFR. This was even before NSFRE. So we're talking the dark ages here. We had 35 members to begin with. 3 of those members were women: Nancy Stefani, Linda Kirkman, and me. Nancy Bobo joined us a few months later. So it was a very different time. It was a time before computers. We did not have cell phones. My first phone was a bag phone that was hardwired into the antenna on my car. And I really thought that I was James Bond. I thought I had arrived. AFP was working hard to increase the level of professionalism in the field. And we all came to understand the need for education and for research. And both of those were very new concepts at that time. Before long, we'd matured into a local plan giving council as well. And some of those early members are still very much a part of it today. People like Mike Deege, Dave Burrier. Does anybody remember the Give 5 campaign that we had early on? Steve Hoeksema, who was the son of my dear mentor, Marvin Hoeksema. Doug Locken, Doyle Sanders, Nancy Stefani, of course, John Severson, Don Ireland Shunick. These were all folks at the table at the first. I remember calling poor Don Ireland Shunick to ask him to run a charitable gift annuity calculation for me. This was before we had the capabilities of doing it in-house, and the math to do it by hand, which was what we did in those days, was beyond me. He was very gracious and helped me out, and I soon could do them on my own, but I couldn't have done that first one. So a great deal has changed, and I believe that that rate of change is going to be exponential in the next few decades. But I also want to preach just a little bit that I believe there are 3 basic truths that are going to remain constant throughout the practice of this profession. The first one is that ethics are always paramount. We learn ethics from many sources, of course, but MIPG helps with the professional side. For you and for your organization, the trust of the people you serve and the trust of the people who give is the most valuable asset. Without that trust, you've got nothing. Second, professionalism is the best way to serve your personal and organizational mission. It's so important, I believe, to be a student of philanthropy, to learn from your colleagues, from the experts, from the journals, and especially from the research. This is essential to be able to plan creatively and strategically, not just doing the same thing year after year. This doesn't mean chasing the latest ice bucket challenge, but it does mean data-driven decision-making. And a great way to keep yourself on that track is certification in whatever way that's appropriate for your particular area. Basic certification and then advanced certification helps you recognize the command of this body of knowledge and proves your competence to donors and to volunteers. This has been a really important part of my career, and I think a very good example of this is my successor at the foundation, Rob Hilbert. And finally, I believe that fundraising will always be about relationships. No matter how many platforms and communication modalities that are available to us to use as tools, this is about relationships. We were raising money long before we had email or blogs or social media or even cell phones. None of these methods are a panacea. Fundraising is heart to heart. If we are going to raise planned gifts going forward, it will be through, hopefully, again soon, personal face-to-face meetings. At the highest level, our job is guiding our donors to find the joy in giving. We, I believe, are the catalyst for a chemical reaction, combining our mission with the donor's passion. And when that works in planned giving, the results can be huge. Life-changing gratification and satisfaction for the donor, and extraordinary long-term support of the mission. I really want to thank the wonderful committee that put this meeting together so beautifully today. I don't know about you folks, but this is by far the best Zoom meeting I've seen over the last 7 months. This was really exceptional. But most of all, I want to thank you for being my teachers, my colleagues, and my friends over all of these years. You have the big hearts needed to carry the work forward, and I know all our missions are in good hands. Thank you. Back to you, Ryan.
Gosh, thank you, Susan. It was really a treat to hear you reflect. And I know most of us recognize the names of the folks that you talked about. And it's kind of fun to imagine what it must have been like to have been at the table when all of you were just beginning in your careers. That seems kind of like a, like a movie or something, like y'all were in a room some years ago and you were talking about all of your careers, and now you've made it, and you've been, yeah, somebody just put goosebumps into the chat. Yeah, exactly. I agree with that. So that concludes our time today. I will wrap us up and sort of adjourn us. I know that many of you probably were multitasking this morning, as is our mandate. Us as fundraising professionals are always busy. So thank you for dedicating your time to us this morning. Thank you for joining us. And then we will see you tomorrow morning at 8:15 for the second of our 2 days. And really appreciate everybody making some time. Feel free to email me or any of the other planning committee members, myself and Brooke and Mike, and we will stay in touch and see you tomorrow. Thank you.